Next, we ask Thomas Gleeson, Pablo Vegas, Chris Ekoh, and Tim Nemkid, please come forward. Thomas, we'll start with you. State your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thomas Gleeson, Chairman of the Public Utility Commission, testifying neutrally today. So, Mr. Chairman, I thought I would just give a brief update on our activities, and then maybe if I have time in my prepared remarks to respond to some of the questions that came up with the previous panel.
Just remember, it's 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I will be as brief as I can. So in response to a directive by the governor on July 14th, the PUC has opened an investigation to study all of the events around Hurricane Beryl, the preparation, the activities during the storm, and activities post-storm for restoration. We've committed, per the governor's directive, to have findings and recommendations to him in a report by December 1st of this year. It's covering most of the same issues that we're talking about here today: communication, vegetation management, mobile generation, overall storm hardening of the grid. We are issuing RFIs in this investigation. This will not be a typical investigation like we would normally do, where the outcome is some administrative penalty that ultimately gets put into general revenue. My focus and what I committed to the governor was the purpose of this should be to shed light on everything that happened. So all of our RFIs to the companies, all of the responses will be done publicly, so everyone can see really what happened during this event. Like I said, that report will be done no later than December 1st of this year. What I would say, Vice Chair Hernandez, you brought up a very important point, which is what can be done right now, especially about vegetation management. And so we've been talking to CenterPoint. I would say, I just talked to their regulatory staff this morning about something that I thought was a pretty easy fix potentially for some of this, which is it takes time to go knock on doors to see if people are willing to let you cut down vegetation that's outside of their right-of-way. Set up a portal, advertise that portal, communicate with your customers, let them tell you that they're willing to have you come on their property and cut down trees that potentially are outside of their right-of-way. I think that's something that could be done very quickly, and I think would be very effective in addressing this issue as we look to see to some of the other comments if the law needs to be changed to give the utility the right to go outside of their right-of-way and cut down that vegetation. So those are the types of solutions we're looking for, both short-term, medium-term, long-term, what can be done through PUC rule, what needs to be done through statutory change. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I will conclude my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Pablo, go ahead, state name, position, and that you're testifying neutral.
Good afternoon. My name is Pablo Vegas. I'm the president and CEO of ERCOT. I am testifying neutrally today. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members of the committee. I want to spend a couple of minutes explaining how ERCOT prepares and responds to severe weather events, and specifically to provide some feedback on our experience during Hurricane Beryl. While Hurricane Beryl was a storm, it had devastating impacts to Texas and exhibited the challenges that are faced in operating the electric grid, not only at the system level, which is what ERCOT does, but also and primarily at the local level that the transmission distribution utilities are charged with. From an ERCOT system operation perspective, there was adequate generation available to meet the demands of the system, including meeting all the demands if there had not been any distribution outages. And additionally, there were not any substantial transmission level losses that would have jeopardized the ability of the ERCOT grid to deliver power if the distribution system had not been affected. Hurricane Beryl did not impact the ERCOT system to any material degree that caused system stability or reliability risks beyond the locally affected areas that have been discussed extensively. Before and during and after every storm, we work to make sure that we employ clear communications throughout. Specifically, how we prepare and train for a weather event like this, we host system operator training every year, hosting severe weather drills that alternate between hurricane and ice storm preparedness, and that includes transmission operators as well as qualified scheduling entities. Market participants also get the opportunity to provide critique on those drills, and we improve those in each subsequent year. Specifically to Hurricane Beryl, as part of our regular monitoring of tropical events in the Gulf, we communicate frequently with market participants when we think that there's a possibility that a hurricane is going to hit our region. On July 3rd, we issued our first operating condition notice for Hurricane Beryl due to the likelihood of it making landfall on Sunday, July 7th. We made additional subsequent market notices on July 5th and July 6th, updating the information as the storm got approached. We also worked with transmission operators with adjustments relating to outage coordination. Transmission operators were specifically asked to review planned and existing outages to see what could be canceled or restored. We also asked them to review emergency operating procedures, evacuation plans, and the possibility to staff backup resources at their facilities. We also communicate directly to the qualified scheduling entities, the QUESIs. We ask them to update their current operating plans and their high sustained limits as soon as those conditions change. We also review fuel supplies, and we ask providers to notify ERCOT of any potential fuel restrictions in generation supply. We review planned resource outages, which are the suppliers, the electric generators, and we ask them to consider delaying maintenance if at all possible. And then we review emergency operating procedures and ask them to notify ERCOT of any changes or conditions that could affect system reliability. After Hurricane Beryl hit, we continually tracked and monitored the generation resources and transmission to make sure the grid would remain stable.
Thank you. Chris, state your name, position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. My name is Chris Ekoh, the Deputy Public Counsel, Office of Public Utility Counsel. Chairman, you asked earlier, or you mentioned something that was of interest to OPUC, which is where is the public in all of this? And one measure of where we need to see the public in all of this is the impact in terms of the number of lives lost. From what we've gathered so far, the number of lives lost, approximately 36 is what we know. Harris County, 18. Galveston County, 5. Montgomery County, 8. Madagascar County, 1. Fort Bend County, 9. And the goal of OPUC has been, and will continue to be, to provide a voice for Texas consumers and to be a resource for them in their utility needs. One of our most important roles is helping to connect consumers to resources and information in times of emergencies. We did that in this case. We put together a comprehensive list of resources, including utility contacts for reporting outages and down lines. We provided information regarding where to check for road closures. We provided local TDM contacts. We provided locations of cooling centers across the Beryl impact areas. We were engaged in all of the TDM daily calls so that we can provide and push information out on our website and throughout our electronic platforms. We provided information on boil water notices, tips to fast-track permitting requirements, information on reporting damages to TDM, and also applying for assistance through FEMA. We did receive increased number of calls between July 8th and July 22nd. We were able to connect at least those who call to the resources that they need to be able to respond to their immediate needs. We do a lot of things for consumers, and I think when I sit here and I listen to all of the things that has been said in testimonies, one of the things that we could do better, time permitting, is, especially with vegetation management, we do annual meetings every year. If we have names and addresses of areas where you have tall trees that you cannot put down, give us the names, give us the addresses. We'll invite them to come to the annual meeting. The educational process has to start from somewhere. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Nim, just state your name, position, and that you're testifying neutral.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Nim Kidd, Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management. Vice Chancellor for the Texas A&M University System, I have to start by thanking the members of this body for giving us the authority and the resources to go do the job that our agency loves to do. Also need to thank Governor Abbott, the Board of Regents, Chancellor Sharp, but more importantly, the men and women of the Texas Division of Emergency Management that live and work in the communities that they love to serve, and their families often impacted by the same disaster they're responding to. We're an agency of law, rule, and policy. We fall under Chapter 418 of the Texas Government Code, and we firmly believe in a bottom-up approach. Our local officials, like Judge Keogh sitting behind me, are the ones closest to the citizens and know how best to solve the problem. Our job is to support them. We do that through all disaster response. I won't go through the timelines that you've already heard about, but we put over 2,500 outside of area local first responders in to support our local officials. And I think one of the most important things we did was set up our resource staging area to help deliver food, water, and ice in the aftermath. And Chairman, I do want to yield the rest of my time, but I want to thank you personally for your work on the Wildfire Investigative Committee and take a quick moment to let you know that out of all the aircraft that were sent here after those fires, today there are 2 aircraft left in the state of Texas to fight the next wildfire.
Thank you all. Members. Representative Dean.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I have a question for Chairman Gleeson because I think this impacts you. Or HB 2483 in the 2021 session, which says that can transmission and distribution utility to lease and operate facilities that provide temporary emergency electric energy to aid in restoring power to customers. So we just heard from CEO Wells regarding them spending $800 million to lease generator from Life Cycle Power, but that had they been able to purchase that same equipment, was around $325 million. Help this committee understand what that's about.
Yes, sir. So I would say one of the core tenets of deregulation of unbundling back in 2000 was there needed to be a separation between generation and transmission distribution. And I believe that bill was a compromise to not blur the line between those two things more than leasing would. Last session, there was testimony, I believe, from CenterPoint on a bill that would have allowed them to buy these mobile generation facilities. And there was discussion about it would be cheaper, but ultimately the legislature decided not to move forward with that. I would imagine in large part to not further blur the line between generation and transmission.
Well, I think we need to re-look at that because we're listening to CenterPoint talk about ratings. We're talking about what the ratepayers are paying. You know, is it fair to the ratepayer to be getting caught up in this legislative process? You know, and again, business standpoint, it makes sense for them to buy their equipment if they're able to buy their equipment.
Yes, sir. And I would say that whole kind of paradigm around mobile generation needs to be reviewed at this point. You know, I would remind everyone when that was all being debated, we had just come out of Uri. And so I think there was a desire to make sure that Uri would never happen again. Perhaps at that time, these larger units were necessary. We've done a lot of work since then. We've weatherized our facilities, you know, amongst other things. And so I think it is appropriate, you know, at some normal iteration to see if what the program is set up to provide for are still the needs of the state.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you.
Vice Chair Hernandez and then Representative Metcalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you, Chief Kidd, for all of the support that you provided for our area in food and water and ice. There wasn't a single distribution that we had in our community that we didn't run out of supplies. And so there was a lot of need out there, and thank you for all the help that you provided. Now, Chairman Gleeson, back to your idea of setting up a portal for customers to opt in on this vegetation, and I agree with Chairman Wells that, you know, there's no other time that people are more motivated than right after the storm to participate and help in the vegetation management. But how can we continue that moving forward? You know, because we have these conversations, we have these hearings right after a storm, and then kind of the interest kind of falls off and there's no follow-up. So how can we work on that?
So I think we have to be diligent in that. I think one of the benefits of setting up, say, a portal and doing, you know, kind of constant communication around that is to remind those customers continuously that this is available to them. You know, you're right. As we get further away from the event, this kind of loses front of mind. But I think that's incumbent on us, OPUC, state agencies, to also help in that effort to communicate to customers that this is available to them and to see it as a kind of a shared responsibility, right? Because if a tree outside of the right-of-way in your yard falls on a line, it doesn't just affect you. It affects your neighbors. It can affect entire communities. And so I think messaging like that, especially in Texas, really, makes a difference with how people act. And so I think if you can kind of frame this as a shared community value towards life and safety and how important electricity is to that, I think we can make a lot of headway in our efforts there.
And how can we provide clarification? I know Mr. Spiller had that, the easement language, but we may not all be on the same page on whether or not they have the authority. Is that something we could do through the PUC or something that needs a legislative fix?
So I would say if CenterPoint is correct, and that's the way it's always been told to me, that they do not have the authority outside of their easement to trim shrubs and do vegetation management, we would need statutory change, I believe, in order to do that. If Representative Spiller is correct, and we'll have our staff and our attorneys go back and look at this as well, then I think it's something we could probably do through rule potentially. But as always, the more clarification and guidance we get from you all through legislation, typically the easier it is to get those rules through.
Thank you.
Representative Metcalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Chief Kidd, I refer to you in my office as Superman. So thank you for all that you do and your staff, your incredible team that you have surrounding you. The state of Texas is grateful for your service. And gentleman behind you, Jason Millsaps, is my OEM director in my county, and we refer to him as Superman Jr. So, but no, thank you for everything that you've done, Chief Kidd. Now, Chair Gleeson, you mentioned about the portal being set up. I love the idea. Question is, maybe the retailers also sending out a notice in their monthly bills to the customers. If I like that idea, it's my idea. But about the vegetation clearing, is that something that they need statutory approval for, or can they go ahead and do this so that we can, just like Vice Chair Hernandez says, we're going to lose interest in time?
Yeah, I don't believe we need statutory change for that. I think that's something we could work with them on. I think, multimodal communication makes sense on something that's this important.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the reps that I talked to did reach out during the storm and try to help. What I think we saw was the systems for taking that assistance, for reaching out to customers, weren't really there. As we all know, we learned this during Uri, the time to establish those systems is not in the middle of the emergency. So I think, as we move away from Beryl, it's incumbent on all of us to look at our communication systems, how we can leverage what's already there, but where we need to make changes like this, like having a CenterPoint or any other TDU, have the systems in place to use the customer-facing, reps to communicate with those customers, I think is something we really need to look at.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Mr. Vegas. I think you heard the earlier testimony either in here or somewhere in the vicinity. My conversation with Mr. Wells about potential grid events, he talked about, that they had counted 115 potential grid events since 2022, and we're projecting, more in the months and years to come. And so I just wonder, from ERCOT's perspective, does that sound right? Is that something a number you would agree with, and as well as that prediction of additional such grid events?
So the 115 communications that he referenced that we made, I think includes virtually every market notice that ERCOT has put out during points in time between March of 2021 and today, which include advanced action notices, AANs. So when an advanced action notice is when we see a point several days in the future where there could be the potential for tighter grid conditions, we would put out an AAN to notify operators of generation facilities and transmission facilities that we may need them to reschedule or change the schedule of an outage, just to put them on notice. And then as we get closer to that event, we would put out subsequent notices, things like operating condition notices, OCNs, which would then say, hey, we do expect to have tight conditions tomorrow. And so here's what those conditions are. Anytime we have the three major areas of Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio over a certain temperature in a season or under a certain temperature, it precipitates an operating condition notice. So there's a lot of standard communications that ERCOT puts forth that are all being included in this 115 number of potential grid scarcity events. So I wouldn't characterize all of those as points in time where the grid was scarce. It's part of our standard communications to help to keep the market informed. And then when we progress and do get closer, we'll often then do what we've talked about as a weather watch or a conservation notice, when we're actually speaking to end consumers and to business customers and saying, we are actually expecting conditions to be such over the next day or the next 2 days. And we get very specific in those events. Those numbers of communications are substantially smaller than the 115 noted. So that's the broad, I think they grouped all of these kind of communications together and they consisted of the 115 notices. With regards to the second part of your question, as I've talked to you all, often, we are seeing incredible growth and demand in the Texas grid. We are seeing growth also in the resources that are coming on the grid. Just from July, to August, we saw 1,500 new megawatts of generation actually added to the grid. Majority of that was solar and wind. But it is resources that are available for points in time. So I would not go as far to say that I'm predicting more scarcity over the next couple of years. It is critical that the dispatchable generation efforts that this body has helped to incentivize continue to advance, as I will continue to say that the need for balance and the growth of the generation mix in ERCOT is one of the most critical issues that we have to make sure is attended to. And what we're seeing is the evidence of that happening with the Texas Energy Fund being very successfully interested in. So, but I'm not predicting any growth in scarcity or anything along those lines, because I do see important resource additions, batteries, solar, and eventually we're going to be seeing the natural gas resources coming onto the grid too.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. I think that's important, an important clarification that the 115 is basically covers everything, including just, there may be something, in the out days or out weeks, but that's, an actual conservation notice would be a much smaller sample size.
That's exactly right.
Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Okay. And so, well, in light of that, it is a risk mitigation strategy like procuring this mobile generation, as was discussed earlier. Is that an appropriate risk mitigation approach to take?
Well, I think it'd be helpful to clarify that the mobile generation that CenterPoint procured was never intended to be used to mitigate scarcity conditions or to prevent the ERCOT grid from getting into a load shed event or into emergency operations. It's only usable after we have gone through all of the emergency levels and have requested load shed, that then that mobile generation could be activated and used. So it doesn't provide any service to the ERCOT grid to prevent getting into a load shed or to prevent scarcity. It is only usable after a load shed event is ordered. Their customers are disconnected, and then they restart and reactivate those customers with those mobile generators. That's the purpose of what those generators were purchased and are available to be used for. Thank you. Those leased.
Very clear. Important clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not to help managing scarcity on the ERCOT grid.
Okay. And so in ERCOT's planning for different contingencies, do you factor in that type of leased mobile generation to help you manage a major grid event, or is that something you don't even take into consideration?
No,
because you're trying to avoid that happening in the first place.
That's correct. We can't take it into consideration because since it can't be used to help alleviate a scarcity condition on the grid, it doesn't factor into our planning in terms of managing the grid.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And then I have a question for Chairman Gleeson, and I apologize, I stepped out of the room for a moment while you were giving your 3 minutes. So hopefully you didn't address this already, but I think you heard the question I asked previously about the people who are on the list of critical care, obviously have special healthcare needs, that type of thing. And CenterPoint's testimony was that they are not, and for that matter, them and any other TDU, is not permitted to share that information of who's on that list with local law enforcement or first responders as a result of a PUC rule. Can you speak to that, what the rationale is behind that rule?
Yeah, so I'm not personally aware of that rule. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but what I would imagine is if there's a PUC rule like that, what it is based on and grounded in is privacy law and HIPAA. And so I think we'd have to have a broader conversation if that's the case about how we would, ultimately be allowed to let that information be shared. If it is like I imagine, there's some privacy protections in law that require consent to give that information out.
Okay. Okay, if you could check on that and,
Yes, sir.
and let us know, I think that's something we want to look
Absolutely.
into. And then, while we're on the topic, I'd ask Chief Kidd if you have any perspective on that issue at all, just having dealt with so many of these disasters.
Yep, thank you, Sir Nim Kidd, Chief of the Division of Emergency Management, and not just in this event, but in a lot of events. There is a program called STEER, the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry, where an individual or the family member of an individual can register with their local government, their local Office of Emergency Management, that they may need special needs or additional assistance during an evacuation or a long power outage. That is a revolving list. The day that it's published, it's out of date because people move into an assisted living facility, people pass away. I think it has been our experience dealing with our local partners in the past that a utility company may have the most up-to-date information, or at least a good section of information when we have extended power outages for those first responders that are charged by state law with doing welfare checks to be able to go out and know the address and the contact information for the person that they're trying to follow up and check with. And so I would be happy to work with Chairman Gleeson to see if we can figure this out. If it's an administrative rule, let's have the addressing of it. If it's not, we'd love to come back to this body for some ideas and recommendations.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, please do, and let us know how we can help in that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Hernandez.
If I can just follow up, on that STEER program, you have that list and you share it with the local first responders, and they are the ones that are responsible for going out and checking on the individuals on the list, or how does that?
Yes, ma'am, a little more detail to that. The local authority, usually at the county or a city level, has a data custodian for that list. So our job is to be the place for people to submit the information to, not to qualify or to clean that list. Once a year, we ask them to refresh that list, because you can have, as you can imagine, if there's somebody that is oxygen dependent or electricity dependent, they're probably in a state of health care. We find a lot of people on that list have passed away by the time that we actually go and look at that list. So we don't want to waste that resource going to a place where the family probably didn't take the time to take them off of the list. Now, there are nursing home assisted living facilities that I believe in certain statutes are required to share that information with the locals as well. By and large, it is mostly the local elected officials that appoint a data custodian for that data, and the local first responders that are charged with going and knocking on those doors and doing the welfare checks.
Is that at the city level or county level? Who are the local?
Yes, ma'am, it's both. If it's in the incorporated city limits, it falls on the city. If it's in the unincorporated area of the county, it falls upon the county.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Kidd. So I just want to follow up on a little bit on, you'll remember that I've written legislation and worked with you trying to get something established along the lines of Amber Alert, where the state of Texas, specifically you, would be the ultimate authority when there's something going on, whether there's an incoming storm, go to high ground, so that you would be the go-to. And we haven't done that. We've talked about it, and Speaker Bonin back then was interested in it and so forth. But tell me where we are with reference to what you're doing nowadays and whether or not you sort of came into play with this storm when all these folks lost power. Are you doing anything? Are you able to do it? Where are you these days?
Yes, sir. So we support our cities and counties. The local elected official, the county judge, like the one sitting behind me, and the mayors for the incorporated city limits are the first line communicators with their citizens for a disaster.
Right.
All 254 counties and all the cities within those counties have the ability to do emergency notification to the local level. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to be clear on this because it gets confusing. There are emergency alert systems and wireless emergency alert that's set up by FEMA that several jurisdictions in Texas have the ability to push a button, and it is supposed to notify all cell phones in the area of geography that they've defined. I can tell you that's easier said than done. The technology is not quite there to do that as crisp or specifically as it's advertised. The next portion is many of our jurisdictions still have the place where you go and put your contact information in, and you submit that to the city or county, and they communicate with you directly. One of the challenges that we see during disaster is not only do cities and counties have that capability, school districts have that capability, utility companies have that capability, news outlets have that capability. And Chairman, they send different pieces of information to the same group at the same time, and that causes confusion.
Which is what, remember, you'll recall, that's what I was trying to get to, that at the end, somebody's got to be in charge. And I felt that your office was the one that needed to be in charge when we had these big events. That it's not CNN or Fox or, Montgomery County, that it's you, right? Because it's going to be a multi-county event usually, right? So, and where, we also talked about this, remember what does Florida have in terms of their alert?
So Florida uses a statewide system, I believe. I think the counties, because they don't recognize the cities as emergency management, it's county-based, so they've got 62 to deal with, not 1,470 like we do here.
Right.
I believe they are using a statewide system. It's a name brand system that's out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as who has the authority to activate and push that button, I'm under the impression it still comes from the local level, even though the state may direct it, or the state may have bought the system for the whole state to use.
So are you comfortable commenting whether or not you think we can do a better job? Get us to where, you know how I feel about it, where I feel like we got to get to is a statewide system. We have the blue alert, we have the silver alert, we have the amber alert, and so I wanted something for emergencies, right?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, this came to me when the last years ago, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it was, when we had a pretty good-sized hurricane hit South Texas, and it hit Corpus Christi bad, and we had a lot of people coming from Corpus Christi to Laredo. We were putting them up. I also had a lot of companies in Laredo that were shipping water and supplies, but they'd show up to Corpus Christi or areas. They didn't know where to go, right? They would just show up at different places. And so I thought, we've got to have a better system of coordinating, where people can go if they got to go to high ground, or where they can go to get supplies if they're going to stay in an area, where they can still stay there, but they don't have supplies.
Yes, sir.
So do you want to comment on whether you think, because you Superman, okay? But Superman can't cover the whole world all the time. Hey, by the way, I second that emotion, because I think the world of this guy. He's great. You're great. COVID, oh my gosh. You all know this. I got to mention it. You weren't here, Spiller, but COVID, without you, I don't know what we'd have done. So thank you very much for everything you've done. But are you comfortable commenting on that, or you don't want to comment on that in a public setting, or?
Yes. I do believe it needs to be a blended approach. I believe nobody is going to know faster and more accurate information than our local partners. And I do believe there needs to be a statewide safety net to support them when they're impacted or they can't deliver the message. It's a question of authority and capability. I believe the authority should come from the local officials. State law today says only a mayor or only a county judge can mandate an evacuation, not the governor, not the legislature, not the emergency management chief.
But remember where I was going with it is that, and it's not just about you mandating the evacuation. I get that. We got Judge Key over here. I get all that. But it was about getting the most updated and most current and the most accurate information, whether it was Winter Storm Uri or this hurricane or what I got to deal with in Laredo. Unfortunately, every so often we get a bomb threat on the World Trade Bridge, and if there's a bomb that goes off on the World Trade Bridge, what that will do to the economy here in Texas, it's crazy,
yes,
right? So
I think we can meet it with a blended approach.
Yeah, so that's where I was trying to get to, is that I know that Governor Abbott would want us to have the premier and the marquee, system here, to where the governor does take the lead when you have these big events, so that people know what's going on, what do I need to do, right? And it's not about the evacuation, but that they have enough information, for example, to make that determination on their own. If you're a diabetic or you're in a nursing home, that's part of what's happened before. We had a bunch of people who died in nursing homes because they didn't get out by the time the water got there, right? But they didn't know, because they were hearing all different kinds of information. So I hope that Governor Abbott or someone in his office is listening. This is a chance to fix this, because there will be other disasters.
Yes.
natural or man-made. And I specifically talked about man-made as well because I think that's where we are.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for the respective jobs that you do for us. I want to, Chairman Gleeson, if you don't mind, I want to revisit briefly this issue on CenterPoint's actual or apparent authority with regard to cleaning brush and cleaning vegetation within their easement. And I want to be clear that my assertion is not that they have the right to go out and cut down trees that are outside the easement. It is only, my point was relative to what authority they have within their easement that's granted to them. So I know you heard that testimony, and I just want to say, and I'll let you respond to it, but I just want to say, I think if y'all are going to look at that, and that's great, I think it's important to look at their actual documents that they've executed with landowners or predecessors in title to the existing landowners, that land is subject to those existing easements. Just look at that. I think what you'll find is that the plain reading of those documents is that it gives them that authority. And I think you couple that with, when you look at the Supreme Court case and other cases that say that their interpretation of that is that they do in fact have the absolute right to do that. I mean, I think that would be, I think that'd be beneficial, not just for them, but for everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll endeavor to do that in our investigation. And just a quick anecdote about this. So during one of the days I was in Houston for a press conference, we actually, my staff and I went out with CenterPoint to an area, a suburb of Houston, where the houses were so close together, they had above ground distribution lines. The easement was so small that there were 30-foot hedges on either side of the distribution line that were probably 18 inches from the line. And the crew we went out with was led by a gentleman who had come in from North Carolina who said he had never seen anything like this, where we allowed shrubs and trees to get that close to a distribution line. And it wasn't just an issue of that vegetation falling on the line. The crews were having an almost impossible time getting to the infrastructure. There were fences up. They were taking down fences. So the delay, because the easement, that right-of-way was so small, was just massive because they were having to take down structures just to access the infrastructure they needed to fix.
Right. And I don't know that, I mean, I've dealt with some of this before, but I don't know that I've dealt with an entity or a utility having to go and acquire additional acreage. That would be nothing anyone wants to have to deal with, I know, but to access, at least access the easement area and what they're trying to do. But in any event, that's something that should have been done. But I think would you agree with me that even if you take, what Mr. Wells said, let's say it's true that 6%, his best estimate was that 6% of the damage was from trees that were outside that area, that number one, if in fact they had the ability to trim part of the trees that were within that area, that they not only had an ability to do that, that they had a duty to do that. But secondly, that if 40%, roughly half of the damage is from vegetation from within that easement area, clearly there's no dispute that they had that duty and responsibility to clear that as well.
Yeah, I think that I would absolutely agree with that. And I think, as the economic regulator who is trying to set up economic incentives for them to provide reliable power to their customers, what our duty is to figure out how to get those incentives aligned with the actions you all, your constituents, the public, want them to take. And that's one of the things that we'll be looking at through this investigation. What changes do we need in rule or in statute to better align those financial economic incentives with the responsibility that they have and the actions we want them to take?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Chief Kidd, I'm like the others. I'm so grateful for your work and the work of the rank and file in your organization. I'm a vocal critic of a lot of government agencies, and I routinely talk about the Texas Division of Emergency Management is one of the best run government agencies I have ever freaking seen. You guys do amazing work, so thank you. First question for Mr. Vegas. The area that I live in, Harris County, I live in one of the faster growing areas probably in the state. I live in Congressional District 38, which is a newly drawn district. I think that's an indication of how fast our population is growing. And so the reason I bring it up is because I want to ask you about the increased demand for Houston Harris County, which has got to be one of the higher demand areas in the state, obviously. But can you give us an idea, like in rough terms, of the scale of that increase, how fast it's growing, and the balance of residential versus commercial or industrial? Because I know we've got all that stuff right in the area where I live.
So at a high level, and this may be a little bit dated, like in the maybe 6 months old, but at a high level, we're seeing base load growth in the 3 to 5% range in terms of energy across the state of Texas. So just to give you a high level, starting at the very top level, which is actually a very fast level of growth, actually. National average over the past 20 years has been closer to 1%. So the state of Texas is growing much, much more quickly. Within our growth profile, the fastest growing segment is the industrial base. So the industrial load in Texas is growing out of that portion probably like 16% relative to 3 to 5% overall average. Residential is actually quite a bit lower than that because of significant efficiencies that are coming into home stock and building development. Similarly, in commercial, we see a lot of efficiencies in building materials and in building stock. So that's helping to suppress some of the increase in electric demand in the residential and commercial area. But the Houston area is one of the largest load zones in the ERCOT region. It's growing tremendously fast. And when we look ahead at some of the future growth that's coming, the hydrogen economy is very largely being focused along the coastal region of Texas. So that goes all the way from Houston all the way down through Corpus Christi and south of that. And if that continues to develop as predicted, that is a very sizable amount of very large loads that are projected to come onto the grid. And then data centers. Data centers are showing up in all parts of the state of Texas, including around the Houston area. And that is something that we also expect to continue to grow at a very rapid pace. And they're also very large, standalone, and very quickly developing electric users that develop much faster than typically loads of that size are able to.
That's thank you very much. I expected that kind of response. I think it points to how vital the work that we're doing here is going to be in this next session as far as working on our improving the robustness of our grid, of our systems, and the reliability of these energy providers, right? So I want to move to Chair Gleeson because along these same lines, kind of in the last session, we were talking earlier about House Bill 2555, which is the one that by Chair Metcalf that I actually voted for, and I thought that this was a good idea, and I still do. I'm concerned about some of the stuff that's coming to light about how it's playing out. So this bill was supposed to balance the need for reliability by allowing our electric providers to make resiliency investments in our infrastructure and add onto our electrical rates to kind of offset the cost of that, right? That's kind of the basic framework of this. My concerns are about, so first, are we making a measurement of how effective those investments are? So if they're going to charge our people to invest money in our infrastructure, and then it fails anyway, we're paying higher costs for our electric to go out. So first, does that make sense? And second, what can we do to fix that?
Yeah, so the way the resiliency plans will work is they will be filed with the commission. We'll have 180 days to go through them, and then the commissioners either have to accept, reject, or modify those plans. That doesn't guarantee that the utility, if they make those investments, will get to recover those costs, and for the infrastructure capital cost, earn a return on them. Because the costs were envisioned to be so high, I think Mr. Wells said 2.3 billion. I think what the utilities wanted was at least some sense of, if we put this capital investment in, we have some level of certainty we will actually get to recover it. So that, I think, is really the goal of this. I understand that from their perspective, because that's a lot of risk on their side to put that level of capital investment in for resiliency. And I understand their desire to make sure as best they can outside of a rate case that they can recover those costs and earn a return. Our job during that rate case is to determine whether or not those were prudent investments. And so that's the first check. I would agree with you, though, you know, once those have been approved and that those charges are going to ratepayers, they have made a compact with their customers. We, as the Public Utility Commission who sets those rates, have to find a way to ensure that those infrastructure improvements are actually going to generate the results that they say they're going to generate.
Okay, that's a pretty good answer. I want to raise the concern that was brought by the City of Houston, where we're going to levy these additional costs on our customers, on our communities, on me paying my electric bill, and the municipality's concern was that they were cut out of the review process. So CenterPoint CEO sat here and said that they're not cut out, but City of Houston folks in my ear are saying they were. So what's the truth of that?
So where they won't be cut out is in the rate case. So once that, let's say, $2.2 billion was approved, again, that would flow through into their next rate case, where we'd see $2.2 billion, up to $2.2 billion of investment that they then come, and we have a contested case that they seek to recover. The cities participate in those proceedings and can put on evidence and contest evidence from CenterPoint as to how much they should get to recover for that. So that is the check in our process for the cities to come plead their case and us to take that evidence and ultimately make a decision if those were prudent investments.
And thank you. And finally, I don't actually live in the city, so like I don't get to vote for mayor or city council or anything like that. I don't have elected representatives at that level, but I do at the county. Is there any way to include counties in this process, or?
So yes, counties can be parties to these as well. I would say one difference is, by statute, the cities that participate get to recover those rate case expenses through the utility, through the rate case. Counties and other participants do not, so they have to foot the bill themselves to participate in these proceedings.
Okay. Thanks so much for your help.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for this panel?
I have a question.
Representative Raymond?
Chairman, I have a question of the chair. At some point, that the chair's intention to work on an interim study report, is that correct?
Yes.
Would it be helpful, and I want to thank Mr. Spiller for bringing it, bringing attention to the vegetation growth issue and clearing. Would it be helpful if Mr. Spiller helped with some language on a public utilities eminent domain right-of-way bill or proposal? Would that be helpful to you, Chairman?
We would love to have his pro bono work.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, if we could bring Montes and Nielsen up, please. And thank you, gentlemen. And if we'll start, just state your name, your title, and that you're going to be testifying neutral, and then we'll give you 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. My name is Eli Villamontes. I'm the CEO of Entergy Texas, and I'm testifying neutral. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I want to first thank our customers and community leaders for their understanding and support, and let them know how honored we are to serve them. We know that Hurricane Beryl disrupted their lives and businesses. I would also like to recognize state leadership for their collaboration and coordination throughout this event. At the peak of Beryl's impact, 252,000 customers were without power. We immediately began to assess damage and in parallel restore power. Customer communication is a priority, and we provided estimated restoration times the day after landfall. 2 days after landfall, 57% of the affected customers had their power restored, and by Sunday evening, 94% were restored. When it comes to storm preparedness, it is a year-round effort. As a Gulf Coast utility, we test processes, incorporate lessons learned from previous storms, and we have supplies on hand for a Category 4 hurricane. Planning began well in advance of Beryl. 11 days prior to landfall, we began 24/7 tracking of the storm. 6 days prior, employees commenced their storm preparation checklists. 5 days prior, we notified our employees and contractors to prepare to travel to Texas. 3 days prior, we activated our emergency operations plan. And by landfall, we had mobilized a workforce of over 1,200, which is approximately 3 times our base levels. Now I want to talk about the impacts to our service area. The eye of the storm passed through Montgomery County, which is the most densely populated area of our region. It's also one of the most heavily wooded areas in the state. Healthy trees falling, especially from outside of the right-of-way, was the primary cause of outages. This led to damage which mainly comprised of over 800 poles and approximately 150 miles of downed wire. I would note that facilities that we hardened to our latest resiliency standards fared well, including those on Bolivar Peninsula. It's also worth noting there were no impacts to our generation facilities. After landfall, we deployed a workforce of more than 2,500, which included Entergy employees, contractors, and mutual assistance crews. We know the importance of providing trusted and timely information during emergency situations, and this is why prior to the storm, we informed customers about storm preparation and safety measures. We stayed in contact with customers before, during, and after the event through direct calls and text messages. We held daily calls with elected officials and held multiple media interviews in English and in Spanish, and our detailed view outage map kept customers informed. Members, I appreciate the significant impacts that Texans experienced, and I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir. State your name, your title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
My name is John Nielsen Gammon. I'm a professor at Texas A&M University in College Station. I'm the Texas State climatologist, and I'm testifying neutrally. Chair Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members of the State Affairs Committee, I'd like to give you an update on our expectations for impactful weather for the next several months. First off, the risk of strong winds from thunderstorms, such as the derecho last spring, remains low during the summer. And during the fall, the primary risk from thunderstorms are lightning and flash flooding rather than high winds, although high winds are still possible. We've seen considerable rainfall over the past several weeks in the southern and eastern halves of the state. Amazingly, by late July, Huntsville, Texas had already broken its calendar year precipitation record with over 6 feet of rain and 5 months remaining. All this moisture will make extreme heat less likely for the remainder of the summer. We will not be as hot as we were in 2022 or 2023, but both humidity and nighttime temperatures will remain elevated. As for hurricanes, activity will soon start ramping up in the Atlantic Basin. We've already had Beryl, which was a Category 1 storm at landfall. Its wind impacts inland, though, were more like those of a weak Category 2 storm because it had been intensifying rapidly upon landfall, and it took a while to start weakening as it moved inland. We had been expecting a very active hurricane season overall. I think when the official NOAA update is released in early August, the numbers will be down just slightly because La Nina has been a little slow to develop, and so we haven't seen the ideal wind patterns yet that La Nina would bring. Still, though, the risk of another hurricane this year striking Texas is at least 1 in 3, and a major hurricane's odds are about 1 in 7. And all the rain we've had makes trees, of course, more vulnerable for toppling over in high winds, while also elevating the risk of flooding. Lastly, there's no change in our expectations for extreme cold this winter. The latest outlook has about an 80% chance of a La Nina, and about 20% chance of neutral conditions. La Nina typically brings relatively dry and mild weather over the winter time, but it doesn't decrease the chances of extreme cold. So our assessment of the upcoming winter remains hopeful. Thank you.
I have a question for you, sir. So your colleague testified on June 10th and said that your calculations were this would be the worst hurricane season in the last 10 years for Texas. Do you still agree with that?
Overall, it has a good chance of being the worst for the Atlantic Basin, but for Texas in particular, it's a hit and miss. We said about a 50% chance of getting a hurricane landfall. Turned out to be 100%, and still a good chance of getting another one.
And there is one in the Caribbean or coming in to the Gulf, is that correct?
I haven't checked the latest forecast, but I know there's activities starting to ramp up again.
And looks like the forecast National Hurricane Center is showing it possibly coming in the Gulf going towards Florida. But as we know, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go there, correct?
That's correct. And the wind patterns right now favor things continuing to sort of drift westward. So if it enters the Gulf, it has a good chance of reaching Texas.
And then Saharan dust, I'm getting different projections. It's apparently hitting South Texas this week. Well, is there any projection on Saharan dust and its stopping, slowing any of the hurricanes?
The main effect of the Saharan dust layer is to weaken the storm. It doesn't really affect its motion. And once the storm gets organized, it's going to have little effect because it can't really penetrate the storm once it's developed. But it can inhibit development and it can inhibit rainfall.
Okay, thank you. Members? Chairman. What, Representative Raymond?
Real quick, Mr. Villamontes, you mentioned that some of the poles that were knocked down were outside your right-of-way, right?
The trees
Trees
that were
were out-
outside of the right-of-way
Right, so,
came in and either knocked down the line.
the lines. So what, do you know what percentage of the damage occurred, would fall into that category? And I told Mr. Spiller I would ask this because he's working on something, right? But to what extent, trees or that were outside your right-of-way caused damage?
87% of the outages were caused by trees outside of the right-of-way, the vast majority healthy trees that fell.
Very important. I'll make sure we tell him that. Thank you very much. And then, Doctor, before you leave, would you please give me your contact information? We have a Doppler now in Laredo, and I need to talk to you about that offline if I could.
All right, I'll be
Is that
happy
okay?
to do that, sure.
Thank you. If you have a card or something.
Representative Metcalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ellie, thank you for being here today. And just so the committee's aware of, Energy Texas filed their resiliency plan on June 21st, 2024. Is that correct?
That's
With
correct.
PUC. Well, I've got a letter to the PUC that I'll be sending tomorrow asking for their promptness in this. And, if they request any changes, may that be made swiftly. But of your total requests of $338 million, $198 million of projects are contingent upon the receipt of grant funds from the Texas Energy Fund for non-ERCOT program for grid hardening. So I know, Mr. Chairman, we're having this discussion in a couple panels from now, but just want to thank Entergy's for their promptness in this, in adhering to House Bill 2555. And then I also believe CenterPoint, they submitted their plans, but I think they're redoing those after Hurricane Beryl. And so just thank you for this, and I'll be sending this letter to the PUC tomorrow that I have in my hand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members? Thank you both very much. Next panel, Mark, Scott, Lon, and Nick, come on up.
Keep me in order.
Thank you all very much. Judge, if we could start with you and just go ahead and state your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally, and we
Yes.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mark Keough. I'm the Montgomery County Judge. I'm here testifying today neutral. You know, the real reason that I think everyone feels like CenterPoint failed, I don't think is so much because of trees. I don't think it has to do with generators. I think those contribute to this. But it's because of failed communication. They failed to have situational awareness. They provided misleading and sometimes known false information to the public and elected officials. I represent a county of 750,000 people. People who are not here today, of course, Mayor Whitmire, we were together on Monday and he testified he could not be here. And the county judge for Harris County, you know, and all of the 2.7 million people in that area as well. So I feel like I speak for them as well as we talk about this stuff. And as I represent those people, you know, there are some common denominators that I have come to find out, and that they believe, in my judgment, that there has been misinformation, there has been lack of communication, there has been a failure to know what situational awareness need to take place, a failure to plan, a failure to respond, and an ultimate loss of public trust. And as I thought about that, and I think about the trust that Montgomery County has for me and about these others as well, I think as I testified, I encourage you, if you want to go, you can either go to my Facebook or you can go to the Senate and you can look at the testimony that I gave, which very clearly delineates. They gave me a lot of time during that time to share that stuff. You could do that. But the result that I came up with, the final result, and if you will, the not a lesson learned, but I think more so just a final statement to all of us, and that is this. Based upon what I saw firsthand, all those various issues having to do with communication, situational awareness, having to do with misleading statements, having to do with issues associated with not being able to get accurate information, the systems in place. If we as elected officials, both state and local, give CenterPoint a pass, I believe that we, with them telling us about the improvements that they are planning to do, then we need to rethink that position. We really believe, as hard as it is to say, nobody likes to do this, but I represent the people of Montgomery County. As hard as it is to say, do we really believe that if a CEO who currently oversees a company with a base of 2.7, 2.8 million customers and who so blatantly failed to lead in a... May I finish? One statement. And failed to lead in accommodating their needs, it's going to take the company, and they're going to take the company to the next level when he can't even manage the people and assets of what he has now. Y'all are business people, you know it doesn't work that way. And so it is my position, and I'm not saying it's position of those south of me in their counties, but my suggestion is the Board of CenterPoint is that they come out from underneath the ether and immediately look for leadership that is worthy of the people of this region and take the millions of dollars being paid to reward failed leadership and failed work and give it to someone who can turn it around. And I request, I can't demand, but I think it needs to happen. I think the CEO of CenterPoint needs to resign. He needs to do it immediately. And you were looking for a plan, Chair. You're looking for a plan from these people, how to move to the next level. It's not going to change. And you kind of alluded to that at the beginning. It keeps going on and on and on from the beginning.
Got it, and thanks. And
anyway, thank you for
great
giving me
scene.
this
For some of you who don't know, he was our colleague, and we're glad to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir, state your name, your position, and then that you're talking neutral.
My name is Scott Harper. I'm the president of the Conroe Lake Conroe Chamber of Commerce, and I am here to testify neutral. Appreciate the opportunity to share just an overview of what happened in in my area as we serve as a chamber. Communication was broken, but a lot of things were determined by the lack of power, internet, the Wi-Fi, and a lot of those systems were broken. In the medical facilities, we had Memorial Hermann that lost both their main and backup hubs. And had to go to generators, and so their ER traffic was diverted over to HCA Conroe and Houston Methodist. Houston Methodist ER usually sees about 150 or so patients. They were over close to 300 on that first day afterwards. And their dialysis operations did not have power. Those people ended up in the ER as well, causing some other issues. And specialty surgeries all had to be canceled. Education, talking to the ISD superintendents and unintended consequences, but the safety of the fencing that they have to have has to be unscalable. Well, when you put those windshields and those slats and those fences, most of their damage came from fences that were blown down. And so that's going to be a huge issue. And they were all happy that it actually happened during the summer because of all the things that we've heard today. Having to communicate with all their parents was going to be an issue if it was during the normal school year. Preschools don't have the summer off. They had issues relying on the internet outage maps that were not reliable, having to stock their entire kitchens for knowing that they had power, then going in at 4 a.m. finding out they didn't have power and didn't have power for 3 days. So trying to figure out, and what they've told me is instead of turning on the power and then having to turn it back off to fix downline issues caused a lot of confusion for a lot of those industries. Restaurants, when they had power, they opened up, but they couldn't take payments, so they had to go to cash, and that's totally opposite coming out of COVID of what restaurants are doing, and the ATMs weren't working during that time. From some of our banking friends, the attempts on ATMs to steal ATMs went up, even though they were unsuccessful, but the damage to those that equipment was huge. Gas stations ran out. We had people from Kingwood coming to Conroe in the Montgomery area, then traveling all the way over to Navasota. Gas rage was an issue, and authorities had to be called. Grocery stores weren't necessarily stocked and ready because water and different things were the first things out. Equipment stores, such as the chainsaws, they had what they call the storm chaser crews come in and actually take all their inventory, and they were not able to service their local providers. And most of the retailers were back online by Wednesday. And other than that, the food bank took a huge hit in helping and supply, so they need resources moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks for that on-the-ground view. I've been there, so I get it. Thanks. Please state your name, your title, and then that you're testifying neutrally.
I'm Lon Squires. I'm the city manager with the city of Jacinto City, just outside on the east side of Houston, and I am absolutely neutral on this. First criticism for Centerpoint was what little bit we got in the way of briefings was literally a daily telephone call. Not a Zoom meeting, not a Teams meeting, no videos, no explanations other than a very crude, archaic phone call, which we had very little chance for QA or anything else. Because of this committee, I was able to learn today that as I reflect on my crews out on the street today, collecting and picking up trees and limbs and those kind of things, I'm actually subsidizing Centerpoint energy. Yes, I'm going to get reimbursed 75% of that, and 25% of it's coming out of my pocket. But a lot of those trees were left behind in those right-of-ways after they were cut off the lines by Centerpoint or some other contractor. So again, I'm subsidizing Centerpoint's M&O cost, basically. The other point I was going to make was the fact that our nursing home in our city, about 160 residents, by law, and this is something we really would love to see legislative help on, by law, they have to have a generator. All that generator has to do is run what they deem to be called emergency equipment. Typically, that's an oxygen concentrator for a few liters of oxygen for older people. You do not want to go in that or any other nursing home after a few days of no power, no HVAC. They were cooking for 150, 200 people out on the front porch to keep from generating heat. I won't talk to you about the odor in that building at that point. Generators capable of doing their job and running HVAC systems, it's got to be mandatory. The same thing can be said for senior residence buildings. We have an apartment building that houses 3 stories, 200 units, and upstairs you have people in wheelchairs, on walkers, and those kind of things. You can't get those people down. What happens if you've got a fire? It takes an engine crew 22 minutes. We timed it, 22 minutes. 4 people on an engine crew to get people 3 flights of stairs down. That's a life safety issue if I've ever seen one. The other thing I was going to mention is that several cities, well, most cities, if not all, have large generators. We've got them at our wastewater treatment plants, our water facilities, fire stations, everywhere. And it's nice to be on that list for, a rapid deployment for CenterPoint, but that never happened. So those generators are a godsend.
Thank you, sir. And again, state your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
My name is Nick Haji George. I'm the Director of Utility Regulation in the Administration and Regulatory Affairs Department for the City of Houston, and I'm testifying neutrally. Thank you, Chairman Hunter and Vice Chair Hernandez. I'm here to testify on behalf of the City of Houston on how utility infrastructure and regulation affect our ability to respond to extreme weather events. The City of Houston has original jurisdiction over the rates and services of investor-owned utilities within our city limits, and that means that that my team, we recommend and review City Council action on the utility applications to adjust rates. We also file comments on rulemakings, and we participate in contested proceedings at the Railroad Commission and Public Utilities Commission. So I want to speak a little bit about the mobile generation that we've heard a lot about today. Primarily, we've seen that the TEEF, as it's known, has not worked as promised or as predicted in our testimony that we filed in the rate cases. But we do have some recommendations on how we can move forward to improve the situation. So the PUC is currently considering a draft rule that would strengthen the oversight of TDU TEEF spending. We strongly recommend that the PUC adopt the proposed language to require TDUs to obtain commission approval before entering into, renewing, or extending a lease involving a TEEF. These rules will ensure that TDUs do not enter leases that are too expensive or too big for our actual load shed needs. We also strongly recommend that the PUC adopt the proposed language to require the TDUs to file after-action reports whenever they deploy TEEF. We've seen a lot of conflicting information in the media and from CenterPoint on exactly how much TEEF was used, when and where. The rule would fix that problem. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about the CenterPoint, or the TDU resiliency plan, which has also been mentioned in this hearing and others. This allows TDUs to file a plan to plan for spending to improve the resilience of their grids. We support electric utilities continuing to harden their infrastructure through additional resiliency investments. But we're concerned that the statute allows for spending that will not directly improve resiliency, and we urge the PUC and the legislature to consider language that only approves plans that fund measures that are proven to enhance electric service and infrastructure resilience. And what I mean by that is there are some measures in that plan that, if funded, would not have made a difference during the derecho or Hurricane Beryl. So we want to focus those investments on those that would have made an impact that we saw during the storm. They filed this plan before the May storm and the July hurricane, and we're thankful that the State Office of Administrative Hearings has abated the proceeding, which allows us time to go back and review the application. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll also note that Mayor Whitmire's letter and attachment have been given to the committee.
Thank you.
All right, members. Representative Metcalf.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to thank our County Judge Ekoh for being here, and also Scott Harper with the Chamber. Thank you all for making the trip and letting our constituents' voices be heard. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Hernandez.
Likewise, I'd like to thank our guests as well from the district, and Jacinto City and Houston. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for the work that you do, and we promise we're going to try to do better.
I'm glad to see my former colleague. I was amazed to hear your testimony from Jacinto City that there is a cost to you as a result of what has happened. And I was also thinking, as listening to all of your testimonies, I'm wondering about how much exacerbation of mental health crisis for a person who had mental health problems and who may not have had them, but who encounter stress and trauma as a result of this. I have an adult assisted living facility in my area, and they were without facilities for lights for 4 days, and they could not get down from the levels because there was no electricity that ran the elevators. And as most persons in our cities have upgraded their appliances to electric, encounter problems just in being able to, those who did stay in being able to cook. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all very much for coming to testify, and especially I want to thank the county judge, who was a great friend, dear friend, and loved serving with him. And as we like to say, he's house trained. But thank you very much for your suggestions and bringing attention even to what you said, as one of our deans here said, that you shouldn't be taking up the slack for, Centerpoint. If that's part of what they're supposed to do, then that's part of what they're supposed to do. And I'm sure that if it is, and you submit, or you said somebody was going to pay you back, who's going to pay you back 75%?
FEMA picks up 75, we're responsible for 25. I've thought about sending them a bill, yes, sir.
Well, you can. I mean, get your guys to check to make sure that they're supposed to pick that up, and if they are, then cite that and submit it to them. That you should do that. But thank you all very much for your suggestions and for your patience. I know it's been a long wait before you got in front of us. Thank you, and thank you, Judge.
Members, thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here. Next, if we have, this is by, all right, members, we have a general update from the public, and we're going to be doing it by virtual. Okay, we're first member is going to call Alan Provost. Alan is a community servant, and he's located north of 610 east of 59. Mr. Provost, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I can hear y'all.
You go right ahead. Just tell us your name and where you live.
My name is Alan Provost. I'm in Houston, Texas.
We're glad to have you, and go right ahead and give us your thoughts.
Thank you, sir. As a community, one would say communication is key. The aftermath of Hurricane Beryl was a direct example of lack thereof. While the devastation of what was left from this storm seemed unbelievable, the horrible condition in which people had to live following it was beyond reproach. For example, many residents was trying to salvage spoiled food, trying to recover a limited supply of ice, if any at all, was being sold by cash over the counter from only the grocery store in my community. That was also without power for days. My state representative was without power for 8 days. Citizens were going without power for an extended period of time. Many of the people within the surrounding community are living from paycheck to paycheck without any means of buying more food. Those individuals who have to work in order to get paid lost wages due to not being able to travel on the roadway due to gas. Several disabled and senior citizens require medical equipment that need electricity to function were at the mercy of neighbors and helping strangers. Those that had generators who were unable to afford one were given from neighbors. Also, traveling to a gas station was practically impossible because of large trees lying across the road along with power lines. Not to mention the vegetation that was already hanging on the power line for months prior to the storm was now just another obstacle to add to their fallen trees. Also, prior to the storm, many residents with power were already suffering from the scorching hot days, trying to keep cool. From our days, we were idly sitting down, and trying to keep cool. From hours to days, we idly sat and watched power lines linger in street and yard. Whataburger became a great source for Houston citizens. However, there were limited cooling stations beyond the city of Houston did not have generators. Unforeseen medical expense incurred as a result of power outage. For example, medication requiring refrigeration became unusable. Citizens needing treatment outside of their home, such as those needing to get dialysis or cancer treatment, were forced to miss the threatening medical attention. Also, due to excessive and prolonged use of generators, many people were at risk of carbon monoxide. Homeowners had damage to fence equipment, trampoline, patio furniture, bonnet swing sets that were blown into other yards. Landline and cell phones and internet usage was non-existent. Cell phone received SOS without any means of receiving emergency update. Restoration efforts or any surviving assistance. No one had knowledge of local assistance such as places that provided water, MREs, medical supply, ice, etc., due to there being no electricity anywhere. As it pertained to inadequate communication with Centerpoint, when phone service would become temporarily available, there was an automatic message without any pertinent information pertaining to the situation. To add insult to injury, the Centerpoint app was not providing any information either. On Centerpoint website in bold letters, it states, what type of information are you looking for? As citizens, we are asking for is service to the people as you would have service to yourself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Any questions?
Yes.
Chairman Thompson, who you referenced, is here, and she wants to ask you a question.
Mr. Provost, how long were you out of electrical services?
Yes, sir.
How long were you out of electric services?
We were out, my neighborhood was out for about, I would say about 5 days, and the surrounding neighborhood was out much longer than we were.
Do you know how long Norwood Manor was out of services?
Yeah, they were out about, I think about 9 or 10 days.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? We want to thank you very much and appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
He's up there. Ms. Wilson. Ms. Wilson, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I can.
Oh, well, great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. If you could just state your name and tell us where you live and then give us your comments.
I am Huey German Wilson. I'm a resident and president of Super Neighborhood 48, Trinity Houston Gardens in Northeast Houston. Our experience with Centerpoint on Hurricane Beryl was traumatic, to say the least. All of my neighbors for miles in either direction were without power for days, and in some cases, well over a week. Our transformers were down, and trees with potentially live wires laying on the street and on people's homes. At least 40% of my neighbors are seniors on fixed income. They may have been prepared for a Cat 1 hurricane with a few minor supplies on hand, but nothing could equip us for the damage that we've had to endure, with 50% of our tree canopy destroyed in the past yes. You can't hear me, sorry. Is that better?
No, we can hear you. Go right ahead. We can hear you.
All right. I apologize.
No, go right ahead if you can hear us.
I can hear you fine, but I was lagging behind the video, so I'm sorry. The communications from Centerpoint was abysmal, and the response from our elected official wasn't any better. We struggled to get accurate information on the duration of the outages, which meant that a lot of people didn't seek refuge or assistance for additional hours that seniors cannot afford. Caregivers and family support systems couldn't convince their family members to move because they thought the power would be restored quickly, or the list that they were encouraged to enroll in would move them to the front of the line. With all this said, residents are curious about why our trees weren't cut back off power lines before the storm. And who's watching to make sure this maintenance is carried out regularly? Centerpoint can't watch themselves. Why are we even talking about an increase in rates to cover these expenses for Centerpoint on this disaster and not considering some assistance, plans for maintenance, and remedies for customers who had to endure excessive heat, dangerous conditions, and lack of adequate communications from all parties concerned? I implore you to assure your residents that remedies for this communications calamity will be swift and appropriate. These disasters will surely happen. Centerpoint had the monumental task of getting 2.6 million people back online. They accomplished this in 12 days. Kudos to those workers. But shame on you all for not communicating more efficiently with your constituents and your customers. Residents are still waiting for some assistance with these recovery efforts. When will that response happen? Thank you.
We want to thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for participating.
I have a question.
Oh, Chairman Thompson has a question.
Yes.
Ned, how far are you from that telephone post that was down from your house?
Maybe a quarter of a block.
Okay, because I think I live about 500 feet from you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it took how many days? Do you remember?
No, it was, we were out of power for 7 days and 12 hours to be exact.
Okay, I thought it was more like 8 days.
Almost. We barely eked in, but the locations along Hirsch between Weaver and Kelly still didn't get power for another 2 days because they had the additional transformers down on Hirsch Road.
Okay, then, and do you know, what about over there by your church?
The church was without power for about 9 days.
9 days.
Because we were running generators trying to get repairs done at least until Wednesday.
So your church is about a mile from your house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
All right, members, where we're going now is we're going back to the update on the various legislation. So we have completed the part on disaster preparation. Now we're going to go into HB 2555. Connie Woody, Chris Mark would come up. But just a reminder, as you all are coming up, 2 weeks from today, I'm looking to all the industry to turn in those suggested ideas. So we'll be waiting, and please coordinate with Margot, our clerk. Come on down, Chris. Now, members, on these panels, these are basically just updates based on the legislation that was passed. And so I just want everybody to know the focus on these particulars. So let's start. Connie, go ahead and state your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Thank you. Connie Corona, Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission, testifying neutrally. Thank you, Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members. As we've discussed many times here today, HB 2555 established procedures for utilities to submit plans that would strengthen the resiliency of their transmission and distribution systems. That law set a 180-day timeline for the Commission to review those plans and to approve, modify, or deny it. I'll start first talking about the rulemaking and then go on to the procedures for these plans as contested cases. The Commission's rule governing the submission and approval process for resiliency plans took effect in February. It was written so that each utility would have sufficient flexibility to meet its own unique regional needs. The proposed resiliency measures are required to demonstrate a clear benefit to customers. They must strengthen the system to withstand or to more promptly recover from a resiliency event like a hurricane. We have already had 3 resiliency plans filed from CenterPoint, Encore, and Entergy. And I'll have a procedural update in just a moment on CenterPoint that I believe we've already discussed. It's important to note that these filings are contested cases before the Commission and the State Office of Administrative Hearings. Just like a rate case, there are numerous interveners involved representing the interests of each utility stakeholder groups. So that would include Mr. Ekoh with OPUC, that might include cities, other customer groups, and the like. They're very complex, detailed plans, some of them up to 1,000 pages. And for each plan, my staff will make a recommendation on which elements the Commission should accept and approve. Again, each must provide a clear and direct protection for Texans from a resiliency event. Ultimately, the plans will be before the Commissioners for a decision within 180 days of filing. I wanted to close by noting that CenterPoint's resiliency plan has been put on pause, as we discussed earlier today, through abatement. CenterPoint has said that they want to reevaluate their plan to see if it is sufficient to address issues that we all noted during Beryl. The parties in that case will continue to discuss it and will bring an update to the Commission this fall. We're looking forward to hearing also from Representative Metcalf and his letter regarding the Entergy case, and we'll certainly keep you apprised on that procedural schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Woody, again, state your name, your position, and that you're testifying.
Woody Rickerson. I'm currently the Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer for ERCOT, testifying neutrally. So, as Ms. Corona noted, ERCOT is currently an intervener in the filings related to the TSP system resiliency plans. Our role, ERCOT's role, is to review those plans as they're filed and look for transmission changes. So we're looking at those resiliency plans from a transmission perspective to coordinate between if necessary. And so that is ultimately our role in this, and that concludes my note.
Thank you. Chris, any update? Just give us your name, give us title again, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Chairman, is Chris Ekoh, Deputy Public Counsel, Office of Public Utility Counsel. With respect to House Bill 2555. With these resiliency plans, we are fully engaged in reviewing them. And some of the things that we specifically look at, for instance, Chairman, is we look at the effectiveness of the proposed measures in the plans to mitigate the anticipated weather or security-related emergencies. And for that, for instance, one of the questions that came up earlier today was, what happens if a plan fails? The customers pay for it, right? Whether it fails or not, to actually mitigate that specific purpose for which the plan was anticipated, we still pay for it. There's no clawback, we don't get it back. There is no review process at the beginning stages of this plan review. There's no prudence review. Everything goes into the ratepayers. And we pay for it before we start at the end of the whole event. When the base rate case comes up, that is when we begin to say, well, was this prudent? Was that not prudent? And that's one thing that would probably take a legislative fix. It is something that was being discussed in terms of, do the cities, the municipalities, do they have the ability to look at the prudence of these plans before they are actually put into effect and implemented? They do not. And that's a challenge that OPOC has, that most of the interveners have in these proceedings. We look at the cost, for instance, to develop and implement the measures. These are not cheap. They come at a very high cost. And how do we even begin to look at the prudence as to whether or not those costs are actually justified and necessary before it goes into rate? We don't have the ability to do that at this point. So the level of development of the proposed resiliency measures, we look at that. How likely consumers are to realize tangible benefits from these plans, we look at that. The mechanisms to hold utilities accountable in the implementations of the plan, that has to be one of the big part of this review that is necessary, because if we don't set the parameters up front, then we won't have a means to actually make sure the utilities are accountable when it comes time to do the base rate case. Each of the utilities so far have been cooperative. They are working collaboratively. Centerpoint, for instance, is paused. Encore is in negotiations, settlement conferences. Right now, ETI just filed.
Thank you. Mark, again, state your name, your title, and that you're testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mark Bell, President of the Association of Electric Companies of Texas, testifying neutrally. Electric utilities are facing unprecedented challenges in Texas. Our state is adding new residences and businesses at a nation-leading rate. And while connecting these new consumers, we're facing unprecedented weather events. House Bill 2555, the Texas Resiliency Act, was landmark legislation that allows utilities to develop and implement a longer-term plan for investing in grid resiliency, and was modeled after Florida legislation. The Texas Resiliency Act allows utilities a mechanism to plan for and invest in resiliency projects that will help utilities better withstand extreme weather events and restore power more quickly to the customers and communities they serve. Resiliency projects like strengthening of electric distribution facilities, strategically undergrounding electric distribution lines, investing in lightning and flood mitigation measures, cyber security improvements, vegetation management, and wildlife mitigation and response. House Bill 2555 is a smart investment in infrastructure for the future, helping to reduce cost, which ultimately benefits consumers and saves money in the long term. Under House Bill 2555, utilities provide the PUC with their multi-year plans, as mentioned earlier. The PUC reviews, negotiates, and ultimately approves or denies. To put it in medical terms, House Bill 2555 recognizes that preventative care is less costly than urgent care, giving utilities a better mechanism to strengthen their networks and to potentially avoid some of the cost of repetitive storm recovery. But it also allows utilities the flexibility to include the resiliency measures that make the most sense for their service territory, since the geographic regions of Texas are very diverse. Our electric utilities, as mentioned earlier, have begun filing the resiliency plans with the PUC, and those are going through the standard process. As an association, we are united in the common purpose of providing safe, reliable, and affordable supply of electricity, and the Texas Resiliency Act helps our companies achieve those goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Representative Metcalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman, I want to thank you first for promptly moving this legislation along, and our committee members here in this committee, and also House and Senate for passing this legislation. Mr. Bell, thank you for being here today. I know that in the negotiations during the legislation, the transmission portion was taken out of this bill. Do your members have a position on that piece?
You know, as the process is, this piece of legislation was highly negotiated among stakeholders, and that was an element of which didn't make it to the final end. It probably has some utility at some point, but I'm not sure that we would be open to looking at that again.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Bell. I guess I stress to everybody in the room and those outside of here, stakeholders, that we see that this is an important piece, this resiliency. I mean, we spent all day talking about it. So thank you to the PUC for, your swift action and reviewing all the plans that have been submitted, and those two come. So if there's anything we can do to help that along, please reach out. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you, panel. Only one of you leave. Mr. Bell, you have to go, or bring in Cyrus. So Cyrus, come down.
Hey, Cyrus, where's the multicolored paper? No trees left.
So members, we now are going to the panel on HB 1500. Again, Connie, state your name, your title, and that you're testifying neutral.
Thank you. Connie Corona, Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission. I'm testifying neutrally. HB 1500 is our agency sunset bill. It encompasses your statutory direction on our most recent sunset review and other issues about the regulation of electric, water, and telecom services. The Commission has more than a dozen projects currently open to implement various sections of the bill, and I'd like to go over some key implementation efforts that we have already taken or have underway. From an operational and governance standpoint, the agency has strengthened our communications and implemented a new commissioner training program from the bill. We've also adopted a process for commission approval of ERCOT protocols before those take effect, again, as required by the bill. For the reliability program, otherwise known as the PCM or Performance Credit Mechanism, we are nearing the end of our scoping process for the cost-benefit studies that ERCOT and the Independent Market Monitor will each conduct this fall. Staff has taken stakeholder input in writing earlier this summer and verbally at a workshop last week, and we anticipate receiving those completed studies from ERCOT and the IMM by December, so we'll have that information available for you to discuss next session. We've also completed 2 key rulemakings in the past 6 months arising from the Sunset Bill. First is the Transmission Interconnection Allowance Rule, which became effective in March. In that rule, the Commission adopted a 2-tiered allowance based on voltage level. The allowance begins in 2026 and will be adjusted each year. The rule requires that it be reviewed every 5 years, but it could be reviewed earlier as well. We've also finalized changes to 3 rules that revise the standards, processes, and penalties around voluntary mitigation plans for wholesale market participants. I would also like to highlight that staff is working on numerous studies and reports that were required by the bill, and many of these we're partnering with ERCOT. Staff is also developing our biennial agency report, which will include our legislative recommendations. And this will be delivered to you in January of 2025, just prior to the session. Several other reports will be in the appendices of that agency report. For example, the plain language electric industry report. Those are the major items that I wanted to cover regarding HB 1500. Like I said, they encompass more than a dozen projects from different sections of the bill. We've also fully implemented 9 of the 15 sunset management actions, and the remainder are in progress. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into further detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you go ahead, state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutrally?
Woody Rickerson, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for ERCOT, testifying neutrally. HB 1500 contains multiple provisions relating to the PUC and ERCOT. I'll highlight several of those components. First of all, we're supporting the PUC and the performance credit mechanism. 1500 also has the dispatchable reliability reserve service. We call that DRRS. For DRRS, the rules have been submitted in May of this year. At this time, the protocol revision only focuses on generation resources. It doesn't include batteries or controllable load resources. The 1500 also had some board policy and governance provisions where we changed board policy. I've got some details on those that I can cover if you want to hear those. There were several reports that we're supporting the PUC in. Biennial agency report, dispatchable and non-dispatchable generation report, consolidated electric industry report. So we're helping and supporting the PUC in that. 1500 also requested that reasons for generation outages be posted, and those have now been posted. There's also a provision for the temporary electric energy facilities, the TEF, the mobile gen. So ERCOT is participating in the PUC projects related to the determination of what constitutes a significant power outage. And that completes my testimony.
Thank you. Chris, state your name, who you're with, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Chris Ekoh, Deputy Public Counsel, Office of Public Utility Counsel, testifying neutrally. HB 1500 was also OPOC's sunset bill, and I'm glad to announce that 4 of the main recommendations that the Sunset Commission mandated OPOC to undertake have all been implemented. For instance, Sunset wanted us to do a formal analysis for outsourcing outside consultants and legal expert witnesses. That was fully implemented March 22nd, 2023. Sunset Commission also required us to publish a request for qualifications to widen our pool of outside consultants and experts. We fully completed and implemented that on May 1st, 2023. The other recommendation was that OPOC require a conflict of interest statement signed by our outside consultants and experts. That was fully completed even before the sunset was over with December 21, 2022. And then the last piece that the Sunset Commission required us to do was to document expert witness performance and use information regarding expert witness performances, particularly when considering future awards of those contracts. We, again, fully implemented that on March 9th, 2023. All of the rulemakings and projects that are ongoing at the PUC and ERCOT, we are fully engaged and participating in all of those. We filed comments in all of those rulemakings. When reply comments were warranted, we also filed reply comments in all of those rulemakings. And our activities at the board level have also intensified. And we thank the Sunset Commission for continuing OPOC. And again, that's a recognition for the work that we do, and we are grateful for that.
Thank you, Chris. Siren, state your name, your title, and then that you're testifying neutrally.
Yes, Cyrus Reed, Legislative Conservation Director, Lone Star chapter of the Sierra Club. I gave you some written testimony. That's 13 pages that covers several items. Pages 2 through about 5 are about HB 1500. I'm not going to be able to cover it all, but let me start with some good news. Public Utility Commission, the Sunset Bill included some requirements to better engage the public. Those have happened. The public can now go to meetings and sign up on any item that's not a contested case and actually speak. That's a good improvement. The website has improved. It's easier to find information, including the deadlines for filing comments. That is because of your guys' work, so thank you. All ERCOT protocols now must be approved by PUC commissioners. Big and important change. Another change that's required is they're no longer supposed to just give directives to ERCOT. It's supposed to be a formal process. They have an interim basis for that. We're still waiting for final rulemaking. I hope it happens soon because in some cases I think commissioners are still giving directives and maybe not following the letter of the law. In terms of other rulemaking, some of them have been mentioned. We very much appreciated Section 9. I think the PUC did an excellent job on that rulemaking on the allowances. It wasn't a part of the bill that we necessarily supported, but I thought they thread the needle well, and it'll be an iterative process. There is a requirement, as Woody mentioned, to require DRS. Sierra Club disagrees with a particular protocol. Well, we don't disagree with anything on the protocol. We do believe that it was the intent to include battery storage as part of the DRS. We're hopeful that can happen in the future. While there's a reliability standard discussion, which really comes out of SB 3, I believe that HB 1500 continues that discussion. It has been a very back and forth process on trying to establish a reliability standard. We don't view the reliability standard as a load-serving entity obligation, but an obligation of the PUC and ERCOT. We think they're going down that path. And in terms of the PCM, we are very supportive of the guardrails that you guys put in place and believe that now that the PUC is close to coming up with a final version, they'll be able to do that cost-benefit analysis, which should include both themselves and also the IM&M. So we're hopeful that will happen. We've talked a lot about Section 39 and 40, which is the backup generation. There may need to be some changes given what happened. The other thing we're still waiting for that I think is a directive from HB 1500 is to do a full analysis of ancillary services. There's a lot of concern in the market about the cost of those services. I believe that process has started, but that is going to be an important component of HB 1500. And with that, I've got 1 second, so I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Then thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next panel, Walt, Mark, Julia, and Michelle. Walt, if you'd go ahead, state your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, my name is Walt Baum. I'm CEO of Powering Texans, and I'm here today testifying neutrally on the implementation of House Bill 1500 charge. As you've heard from the PUC and ERCOT, they are very busy implementing all of the different rulemakings that you had given them. My members are actively participating in that process. One of the biggest key one that we've been focusing on are several of them, but the reliability standard rulemaking we think is extremely critical because that sets the course for other market structure changes that need to be made to meet that reliability standard using the existing ancillary services and the new ancillary services and new products that y'all have passed in recent sessions, like you just heard, DRRS and the PCM. We do think that once they have written all these rules, they will then be able to do the cost-benefit study of using all these tools to figure out the most cost-effective way to meet that reliability standard, to ensure that there's always adequate generation online at prices that work best for the market. And at that point, the PUC will determine the best way forward. We know there's been a lot of talk about growth, and I think it's really important that Texas always continues to send the message that we're open for business, and that my members are up to meet that growth. And I firmly believe that keeping a healthy, competitive generation market is the best way to meet that load going forward. I'm constantly reminded at how close Wall Street watches everything there, that we do and is watching right now. Years ago when I was committee clerking, I remember coming back into the office and having a message on my answering machine from different Wall Street analysts saying, what did you do? What happened on the PUC sunset bill? Now they are watching, these proceedings, as they go. Recently, last week there was a decision made at a PUC meeting, and forward prices dropped in the 15-minute period after that PUC decision was made. So, while these rules, that is just all to say that this market really needs certainty. And what you've heard, all of the amount of work that the PUC and ERCOT are doing in writing these rules, and then if necessary, bringing back to y'all what needs to be done is key, because we need certainty. And once there is certainty, investment will follow.
Thank you all. Michelle, state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Michelle Richmond, Executive Director for the Texas Competitive Power Advocates, testifying neutrally on House Bill 1500 implementation. The broad direction that the bill gave the Commission and the ERCOT has been implemented in a fairly positive direction so far. We think hopefully it'll help sustain the investment that the Energy Fund is looking at producing. As Walt had said, for our members, some of which I share with Walt, the reliability standard is really job one, and so we are looking forward to the adoption of that. The PUC has indicated that will happen in August. So that kind of sets the picture for which every other aspect of the market is trying to achieve. So when we know what the solution is that we're trying to achieve, it makes the different pieces fall into place a lot better. ERCOT has been operating the grid in a conservative manner since Winter Storm Uri, and so we want to make sure that that's factored into all of the market outcomes that are being done. It's important to, in other words, have what happens in the control room at ERCOT be reflected in the competitive market. That way you can avoid out-of-market interventions, achieve the reliability standard through the competitive market, with that, we expect that energy and ancillary services will continue to be the main driver of achieving that standard in the ERCOT market. Each facet of the ERCOT market has to work together in concert to ensure that the competitive market is providing the incentives to achieve that reliability standard. And so our companies are very optimistic that hopefully we're headed in the right direction. There is a lot of concern about regulatory certainty, and it was very noticeable. We got a lot of feedback from investors and investment firms about the drop in the forward markets for not just this summer, but the following 2 summers after the decision was made on ECRS. And it was really fascinating to look at the actual forward markets and see the correlation between when the discussion started and where the prices were and the drop immediately after the decision was made. So, people all over the country are looking at Texas. They are looking at ERCOT. They are looking at what's happening and trying to determine whether this is a market that is stable for investment or not. I think DRRS, we're looking forward to the implementation of that, and we think that the way that ERCOT has slated to implement it is exactly what was contemplated in the statute as a driver to get some investment in dispatchable generation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Julia, state your name, who you're with, and that you're testifying neutral.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter, members of the committee. I'm Julia Harvey, Vice President of Government Relations at Texas Electric Cooperatives, testifying neutrally. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this committee for your leadership on this legislation, and I also want to extend our gratitude to the PUC and their staff for their efforts in implementation over the past year. We have a favorable view of HB 1500 and think over the long term it will improve reliability in ERCOT. In particular, I want to note 3 aspects of HB 1500 underway that represent significant changes to the regulatory framework. First, generation interconnection cost allocation. Second, DRRS, and a third section called generation reliability requirements. So first, transmission cost allocation. If you recall, this provision assigns a portion of transmission costs associated with new generation directly to the generator. We supported this because it puts some controls around potentially excessive costs that would otherwise entirely be borne by the consumer. The PUC has adopted that change. It will apply beginning in 2026. The rule was done very thoughtfully based on data, and we think it's fair. Going forward, we think there's even more work to be done around reevaluating how we allocate transmission costs generally. Next, DRRS. That's under development in the ERCOT stakeholder process. In implementation, this has taken longer than envisioned by the statute because a longer timeline was needed to design and functionalize a better service. So DRRS will assist ERCOT in managing uncertainty on the system through a market-based product rather than an out-of-market action like a RUC instruction, like reliability unit commitment. And to us, market-based is always going to be superior to out-of-market. And then finally, the generation reliability requirement. This does not come into full effect until 2028, so it's a future program applicable to new generators. A lot of the details are to be determined there, but that program's on the horizon. So in sum, significant positive headway has been made on the implementation of HB 1500 with more to come. As I've said to this committee, I think in June, regarding the ERCOT market, my members are seeking balance where load is paying fairly for reliability under clear rules, and generators that provide that reliability have reasonable revenue expectations. So alongside other initiatives like the reliability standard and real-time co-optimization, we think HB 1500 will help us achieve that goal, but it's still somewhat of a work in progress. So that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, again, state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mark Bell, President of the Association of Electric Companies of Texas, testifying neutrally. House Bill 1500 included all the process improvements you'd expect in a sunset bill, but it also included many policy changes affecting all segments of the electric industry, including the new transmission interconnection cost allocation requirements mentioned previously to promote more efficient generation siting decisions, multiple changes to the competitive wholesale market operations, including the creation of the dispatchable reliability reserve service to incentivize new thermal build and to create to keep existing thermal plants online, as well as firming requirements for new generation and other guidelines. It also included an annual report to the PUC on the competitive retail market and several studies on opportunities for improvements in the electric market and operations. Since last session, the Public Utility Commission, ERCOT, our member companies and stakeholders have been exceptionally busy implementing the provisions outlined in House Bill 1500. Investment in our electric infrastructure, as mentioned earlier, depends on regulatory certainty and responding to clear rules. And over the last 2 sessions, the legislature has provided us with the tools to help meet the state's ongoing and future growth with these tools. And we look forward to continuing our work to implement these measures. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Any questions, members? Thank you all very much. Next, Tony, if you'll come down, Hector, Jean, and Dean. Thank you. Tony, go ahead and start. State your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutral.
Good afternoon. Chairman Hunter, thank you for this time, and members, I'm Tony Bennett, President and CEO of the Texas Association of Manufacturers, testifying neutral on HB 1500. TAM represents over 600 manufacturers around our state, and many of them are our largest employers. Simply put, TAM believes the ERCOT grid should be designed to serve the needs of all Texas consumers, providing them with reliable and affordable electricity. With this in mind, I would like to point to a key provision in House Bill 1500 passed last session that mandates the PUC to establish a target reliability standard aimed at evaluating the health of the ERCOT market. It's worth noting that ERCOT has used reliability targets in the past to help manage the health of the Texas grid. Consumers see the adoption of a reasonable reliability standard as a necessary tool to ensure that the market is meeting the current requirements. Consumers support the PUC using this reasonable standard to make adjustments to the new ancillary services found in 1500, like the dispatchable reliability reserve service, if deemed necessary. However, the PUC should refrain from establishing a mandated reserve margin or any other capacity market-style construct. There is a limit to the increasing cost of electricity that consumers can bear. Further, a reliability standard is not the PUC's only or even its best tool for addressing extreme weather events. Texas now has innovative tools to bolster grid reliability, like the Texas Energy Fund, to encourage dispatchable energy investment. TAM members believe that the combination of the Texas Energy Fund and other measures, together with enhanced funding for distribution systems, i.e. the poles and wires, can make the grid more resilient and further enhance consumer trust in ERCOT. Most outages consumers experience today are the result of issues on the distribution system, and they're not due to failures of power generation plants. So it's important the PUC fully utilize these more targeted resiliency efforts, which can provide more meaningful results toward customers' actual reliability experience. TAM believes that diverting your constituents' limited funds towards a burdensome government-run program like the performance credit mechanism is needless, and it will not enhance the reliability of ERCOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Hector, go ahead and state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'm Hector Rivero. I'm the president of the Texas Chemistry Council. Honored to be with you today, and I'm here testifying neutrally on House Bill 1500. The Chemistry Council represents the business of chemistry in Texas. As you know, Texas is home to the largest production of commodity chemicals, plastics, materials, and other polymers that are utilized all over the world. Our members own and operate about 200 manufacturing facilities across the state and are responsible for nearly 500,000 jobs. Before I talk about 1500, I want to restate, as I have before, that the continued reliability of our grid and competitive cost of electricity are key factors to the viability of the business of chemistry in Texas, and so it's extremely important. I want to applaud the legislature for adopting consumer protections that protect electricity customers from runaway costs associated with any capacity market designs, like the PCM. Y'all did this in House Bill 1500. We feel that the inclusion of ancillary services like dispatchable reliability reserve services on a day-ahead basis can adequately meet our grid demands without the need for customers to pay for generation that goes unused. It's important to note that since Winter Storm Uri, there's not been a capacity issue with our grid. Of course, as you've discussed today, we've had distribution-related outages associated with weather events, and there has been conservation notices issued by ERCOT, but no capacity issues to speak of. We believe that the ERCOT grid is reliable, and that ERCOT has done a great job managing the grid during recent extreme weather events that have placed a strain on the grid. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hector. Jane, go ahead and state your name, title, and then that you're testifying neutrally.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter. Members of the committee, I'm Jean Ryle, a consultant testifying on behalf of the Advanced Power Alliance, or APA, the industry trade association representing a diverse cross-section of the world's leading clean energy companies. In the interest of time, I'll cover 3 of the provisions from House Bill 1500 that APA members are most closely tracking. First, the Generation Interconnection Allowance rulemaking, which was completed earlier this year. The intention of this provision was to limit the burden on ratepayers for unusually costly interconnection of generation facilities. APA members appreciate Commission staff's thorough and collaborative approach, particularly the non-biased review of available data that was made public to all stakeholders. We believe this resulted in a fair outcome for all impacted parties. Second, ERCOT's been developing the Dispatchable Reliability Reserve Service, or DRRS. There was clear legislative intent to allow batteries to participate in this service. Unfortunately, ERCOT is developing this service in a way that prohibits battery storage resources from participating altogether. Our members believe it's reasonable to expect a clear commitment to add batteries, as well as a timeline for full participation. Finally, the Performance Credit Mechanism, or PCM. The consultant developing the PCM has presented a set of unrealistic assumptions that artificially increase scarcity and projects an annual cost to the market of around $21 billion. APA members support the guardrails set out by the legislature for PCM, particularly the $1 billion annual net cost cap. We're hopeful these guardrails will be observed moving forward. In addition, APA members are interested in the firming requirements outlined in House Bill 1500. In that regard, I would note that our robust and open market is already delivering a significant level of firming without burdensome mandates, as evidenced by nearly 1/3 of the solar development in the queue is being co-located with battery energy storage. In closing, APA members ask that the emphasis always be placed on non-discriminatory policies, as these will allow the complementary strengths of low-cost renewable resources, battery energy storage, and our robust fleet of thermal power to operate harmoniously, increasing the reliability of the system. This approach, coupled with forward-looking investments in transmission, will lead to maximum reliability at an affordable cost. Appreciate the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Dean, state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
I'm Dean Foreman, Chief Economist, Texas Oil and Gas Association, testifying neutrally on HB 1500. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of our members who produce 90% of the crude oil and natural gas in Texas and represent the vast majority of the refineries, pipelines, LNG export facilities, and services. On HB 1500, we appreciate the establishment of an ancillary services program for the Dispatchable Reliability Reserve Service on both a day-ahead and a real-time basis under Section 22. This should help mitigate market uncertainty and ensure grid stability and reliability. We're also grateful for the PUC's recent decision on NPRR 1224 to eliminate the price floor on the ERCOT Contingency Reserve Service. This is important for all consumers. In both of these, it's really critical that the PUC understand the lane in which each ancillary service is expected to reside and to minimize any potential redundancies with the performance credit mechanism, which Texoga strongly believes is superfluous and not necessary. The PUC and ERCOT must ensure these programs are cost-effective and not overly burdensome on market participants. Separately, under Section 9, transmission owners should be able to recover interconnection costs, but they should do so long as they are reasonable and do not inhibit the growth of any new generation capacity. Lastly, annual cost reports and performance requirements under Section 23. Those should provide insight into the costs, the actual costs and performance of generation facilities. We likewise urge the PUC to ensure that these requirements are implemented efficiently and do not create unnecessary administrative burdens. Thank you. I welcome questions.
Thank you all. Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much. Nobody has any questions. You all can get up. Get up or I'll think of something. Next, we're going to go into, thank you all again. We're going to go into SB 2627. If Connie, Woody, Chris, and Walt would come back up. Connie, go ahead again, state your name, your title, and that you're testifying neutrally. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie Corona, Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission, testifying neutrally. Thank you for the invitation today. I'd like to provide a brief update on all 4 Texas Energy Fund programs, starting with the ERCOT loan program. On Saturday, we reached an important milestone and concluded the loan application period for the ERCOT program. The application was open for 8 weeks from June 1st to Saturday, July 27th. During that period, we received 72 applications, representing about $24.5 billion of requested funding for approximately 38,000 megawatts of dispatchable generation. We're very encouraged by the interest in the program, and over the next few weeks, PUC staff, together with our consultant, will review the applications. We're putting together a recommended portfolio of projects for the Commission to consider at its August 29th open meeting. Our recommendations will be based on the statute, the Commission's rule, and program priorities that the Commissioners have individually shared with staff. The Commissioners will make a formal public decision on the projects that they believe should be funded. The selected projects will then move into due diligence, and in that phase, we'll go through each application together with our consultant to verify that the information supplied in the application is backed up with appropriate documentation to support the funding of the loan. Applicants who successfully complete the due diligence phase will then execute a loan agreement with the PUC. Loan disbursements will begin before the statutory deadline in late 2025. The next program is the Backup Power Package program. These funds will enable entities to install backup power sources at facilities that support community health, safety, and well-being. The statute directed us to contract with a research entity to develop specifications for these backup power packages. We've just finalized that contract. The statute also created an advisory committee that has been meeting since early this year. For next steps, we'll receive reports from both the contractor and the advisory committee this fall and use those reports to help design the program. The next component of the fund is the Grants Outside ERCOT program. Work is underway on this rule, and we'll have a draft out this fall for public comment. Those comments, again, will help design the program, such as what kinds of projects the program should fund. Finally, the completion bonus grant. Under this program, bonuses will be paid out in installments over 10 years to newly constructed generation facilities that meet certain performance standards.
Thank you.
Happy to answer questions.
Woody, again, state your name, your position, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Woody Rickerson, Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer for ERCOT, testifying neutrally. ERCOT's engagement with interconnecting TEF projects begins when an applicant for a TEF loan enters into the ERCOT generation interconnection queue. That's required. That's a required checkout process that we have before a generator is able to connect. So we're waiting on those TEF projects to actually enter the generation interconnection queue at this point. Very few of them are in that queue at this point. As they enter the queue, we're going to facilitate those projects through our process. We'll implement a tracking system for TEF awarded projects that enter the queue. The TEF projects will have a priority status along with other projects navigating through the interconnection process. So we'll be able to easily track where they are, how many there are, where they are, when they'll be able to interconnect with the grid. I've got some numbers here if you're interested in how that 38,000 relates to what's already in the interconnection queue. Thanks.
Thank you, Woody. Chris, again, state your name, your title, and that you're testifying neutrally.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Chris Ekoh, Deputy Public Counsel, Office of Public Utility Counsel, and I am testifying neutrally. OPUC does not have a direct role in the administration of the Texas Energy Fund. But we do look forward to participating when the interconnection process starts at the ERCOT level. That is when we will participate in all of the TAC processes and the stakeholder processes. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll look forward when you bring into the public portion when it comes. Thank you. Walt?
Thank you, Mr.
State
Chairman.
name and
Members,
title.
Walt Baum, CEO, Powering Texans, here testifying neutrally on 2627 implementation. Earlier this week, like you heard, the PUC announced that it had received applications to finance approximately 38,000 megawatts of dispatchable power generation projects. That figure's lower than the 55,000 megawatts that people turned in their intent to participate in April. But that we think that drop-off is because the application process was very, very, very detailed, as it needs to be, and probably weeded out a lot of applications that probably were never capitalized enough to proceed. But for my part, our four companies, Calpine, NRG, Constellation, and Vistra, all did file their applications by the deadline for over 5,000 megawatts of new gas generation through this fund. My companies have a long track record of building and operating generation in ERCOT, and we do think the PUC should take that into consideration when helping score applications. And as you've heard earlier, from our perspective, the TEF was always meant as a tool to help jumpstart construction in new power plants. But it was, it's one leg of the stool, and the PUC also setting the reliability standard and then setting the services to meet that reliability standard will ensure that this TEF fund is there to help these plants get built, and then these other changes in the market are there to ensure that there's enough revenue to keep these plants online and generating power for a long time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Metcalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Corona, how many utilities have applied for this program?
We've received 72 applications.
72. When do you expect the loan applicants to be approved?
We will invite the chosen applicants to due diligence as of the August 29th open meeting, and then following that, each application will undergo the due diligence process to review all the backup material.
How long does that take?
Typically, we've been told to expect 4 months or so.
Okay. So the non-ERCOTs, their rules are not drafted yet, is that correct?
That's correct.
What's the reason for that?
The statute gave deadlines for beginning the loan program and the completion bonus program, so those were the ones that we began with.
Understood. So, for example, Entergy Texas, who 98% of my constituents have Entergy Texas, they've requested, they've got $338 million requested, but $198 million of the projects are contingent upon the Texas Energy Fund. So I know my constituents will be looking forward to the promptness of your agency so that they can set the rules so that they can have better resiliency.
Yes, sir. We've been working with Entergy on a schedule for that, and look forward to putting that out for public comment this fall on the rule.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Representative Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say, and Mr. Vegas was here earlier, so Mr. Rickerson, you drew the short straw now because the issue he was here on is different than the one here. So to the extent that what I'm going to ask about is affected by SB 2627, Mr. Vegas, in another hearing across the way, previously testified that he thought that by year 2030, that the demand was in Texas was going to be on power estimated that would be 150,000 megawatts. currently, I guess we're at or about usual 85,000. Would you concur in that guesstimate or that estimation?
Yes.
Okay. And so to that extent, do you think that we're doing what we need to as it relates to SB 2627, and especially to the extent there's been discussion and calls for increasing the number that we, doubling the number that we have allocated for currently?
So the 38,000 certainly is a good start, but if that amount of load does show up, it won't be adequate for all of that load.
Right.
Especially on a day when there's no wind.
Right. And my concern is, you know, it's fine if we say, okay, that's 6 years down the road, but the concern is we may be able to get there, should be able to get there, hopefully we'll be able to get there by that time frame. My concern is what we do in the interim. I mean, the next year, 2, 3, and 4 are the biggest concerns that I've got. I mean, do you share the same concern?
Yes, I think if the load growth occurs more rapidly than the generation shows up, we'll have some scarcity conditions for sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And I just want to, my comment, I want to say, Director Corona, I appreciate you and your staff in my working with them in coming up through the Texas Energy Fund Advisory Committee. I just appreciate their work and their diligence, and I do know that they're trying to come up with some guidelines and directives. There are time frames that are set forth in 2627, and so I just appreciate the job that they've done.
Thank you, Representative Spiller, and we appreciate the time to visit with you and getting your guidance on the advisory committee.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you all very much. Next, Mark, Julia, Michelle, and Cyrus. We'll start with you, Michelle. Go ahead and state your name, title, and that you're speaking neutral.
Okay. Michelle Richmond on behalf of the Texas Competitive Power Advocates, and I'm testifying neutrally on the implementation of Senate Bill 2627. You've already heard a lot about it. TCPA member companies filed applications to build more than 7,400 megawatts of new gas generation under the TEF application process. The criteria that Senate Bill 2627 laid out talked about the most qualified applicants, which means financially viable entities with actual experience building, owning, and operating power plants. So the 9 out of the 13 companies that submitted applications have an extensive national experience in doing that and would certainly be defined as most qualified. It's safe to say that the TEF can achieve its objective while meeting that criteria, and that will help safeguard taxpayer funds that are being used to do this. We want to make sure that the entities that are awarded these dollars have a proven track record so that the state is not on the hook for defaults with these plants. I think it's important to talk about the PUC process in this, and the PUC and its staff really deserves a lot of recognition on this. They stood up an entirely new program that has never been done before in record time. They had a very thoughtful rulemaking process. The commissioners and the staff have been very responsive and supportive of the parties that have been navigating this process, both through the NOI as well as the application. They stood up a website with a third-party administrator that has extensive information on it. There's a very thorough guide for applicants to know exactly what they need to do for the application process and the types of documents that need to be submitted. And they had an information email and hotline with very prompt responses to the questions that have been asked. And they were very good about continually updating FAQs on the site so that that information was available to anybody who was looking to apply, which equaled a very transparent process. They even held a webinar for applicants and allowed you to submit questions ahead of time. So I would say it was a really thorough process to navigate, but they gave extensive help to those that were doing so, which was very, very good. You know, the process seems to be going smoothly. I would say for the due diligence process, a lot of that's going to be dependent on how quickly entities provide feedback and documents back to the commission and the third-party administrator. Our hope is that it will go relatively quickly and smoothly, and that hopefully those loans can be executed in the first quarter of 25.
Thank you. Julia, again, state your name, title, and the neutral.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, members. I'm Julia Harvey, Vice President of Government Relations at Texas Electric Cooperatives, testifying neutrally on SB 2627. As you've heard, the PUC has adopted a rule governing the ERCOT loan program, and it has received applications for loans for over 38 gigawatts of dispatchable generation. A third-party administrator will evaluate the applications based on the factors described in the rule, and then the commission will ultimately approve or deny each application. Rules are also in place for the ERCOT completion bonus grant program and for the committee overseeing the backup system authorized by SB 2627. The one unresolved portion of the bill relates to the out-of-ERCOT program, and I understand that will be developed later. We're looking forward to that because we have cooperatives outside of ERCOT that are interested in that opportunity. We weren't surprised by the investment community's interest in the loan program, and we understand the necessity of the program given the need to support additional dispatchable generation in ERCOT to ensure we have the capacity to support reliability in all hours. Then going forward, we also understand the desire to fully fund the program based on the legitimate need to ensure resource adequacy, considering the rapid load growth reflected in ERCOT's forecasts. We do believe more scrutiny is needed around some of the load numbers that have been reported, but regardless, there's no doubt the state is growing. So SB 2627, along with other market-based tools under development, will help us meet that need. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Cyrus, again, state name, title, and your neutral testimony.
Sure. A little out of order, but Cyrus Reed, Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club, Conservation Legislative Director, here to talk about implementation of Senate Bill 2627 and the Prop 7 approved by voters. Sierra Club was not actually supportive of this legislation, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about what's been done since. We very much appreciate the PUC rulemaking on both the in-loan generation and the performance bonus sections of the bill. But I do want to highlight there are two other programs that are important. One is the outside of ERCOT, which can be used for resilience, transmission, and generation, is going to be very important, and we're still waiting for rulemaking on that. And then there are the backup power packages. Those are the kind of grants and loans that could help communities in Houston or nursing homes or critical facilities. Well, an advisory committee has been named, and they have issued an RFP. We have yet to see the actual rulemaking that will be required to implement that section of the bill. And we think in some ways those are very important. And as we discuss the need for additional generation, let's not lose sight of the need for resiliency and backup power that ultimately is going to be more important to consumers. The other issue I'd mention is I do appreciate the separate website that has been developed by the PUC. At some point, as they go forward with the actual applications, I think it will be important to have that information. Some of it will be obviously confidential, but the public should have a right to know which applications are moving forward and have some basic information. I think that will be important for the PUC to have as part of this program, because in the end, it's taxpayer funds. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next witness.
Thank you. Mark, again, state your name, title, and testifying neutrally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mark Bell, President of the Association of Electric Companies of Texas, testifying neutrally. Senate Bill 2627 created the Energy Fund, the initial phase of which appears to be an overwhelming success and is proving beneficial for capital investment in the ERCOT market. The interest in this is extraordinary and is a testament to the value of the wholesale competitive market in Texas, and our wholesale generation companies have submitted applications to participate. Senate Bill 2627 also provided $1 billion in resiliency grants for non-ERCOT utilities, grants to modernize, weatherize, and enhance their reliability and resiliency of their facilities. And as mentioned earlier, it also authorized $1.8 billion to be used for the Texas Power Promise. These programs intend to facilitate and provide funding for backup power necessary for emergency services such as medical care, senior living centers, and police departments, fire stations, and other emergency services. These provisions are important, and they are still under consideration at the PUC. The Texas Energy Fund provides a bridge to spur the construction of new dispatchable generation, as well as funding for the resiliency projects to strengthen our electric system and provide our electric companies another tool in the delivery of a safe, reliable, and resilient supply of electricity. Thank you.
Any questions, members? Thank you all very much. Next, Tony, Hector, and Dean. Tony, go ahead and again state your name, title, and the neutral position.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter. Tony Bennett, President of the Texas Association of Manufacturers, testifying neutral on Senate Bill 2627, but I have to say we really like this legislation. Thanks to this committee and the legislature, Texas now has innovative tools like the Texas Energy Fund to bolster the grid reliability. The legislature was wise in creating this fund to mitigate today's limited available capital and financing for gas-fired and other thermal dispatchable generation investments. The TEF also complements market design changes like the DRRS. TAM believes that the combination of the Texas Energy Fund, the DRRS, together with enhanced funding for distribution system projects can create a more resilient grid to further enhance consumer confidence and trust in ERCOT. It's critical for utilities in the PUC to fully utilize these more targeted resiliency efforts, which can provide tangible results toward customers' actual reliability experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Hector, same thing, just state your name, title, and neutral position.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon again. Hector Rivero, President of the Texas Chemistry Council, here testifying neutrally on SB 2627. Mr. Chairman, I kind of feel like the hot dog vendor after an Astros game, trying to get rid of my hot dogs when everybody just wants to go home, so I'll be brief.
The hot dogs are good.
Thank you. They're a little soggy now, but they're 50 cents a piece, so come on. Anyway, the Texas Energy Fund, created by 2627, has proven very successful at attracting new dispatchable generation. As Ms. Corona said earlier, they've received over 70 applications that propose an additional 38,000 megawatts of proposed dispatchable power generation project within ERCOT. We are hopeful that PUC, in their evaluation of these applications, will prioritize geographic diversity for projects that best meet the needs of the state, focusing on generation where we expect demand growth and address transmission needs across the state as well. We commend the legislature for your leadership in creating the TEF and are certain that it provides greater reliability for the ERCOT grid. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Dean, go right ahead, state the name, title, and neutral.
Dean Foreman, Chief Economist, Texas Oil and Gas Association, testifying neutrally on Senate Bill 2627. Texoga supported this bill, and we're pleased with its current progress. We appreciate that the PUC has undertaken all this work on the Texas Energy Fund and emphasized the importance of timely distribution of funds, in particular geographic diversity across the state and targeting areas where generation is most needed. That's crucial in achieving a balanced energy availability across the state. For the PUC's ongoing review of the Texas Energy Fund awards this year, we emphasize the need for both geographic diversity, as I mentioned, but for grid reliability, supporting a standard that's based on expected unserved energy, EUE, based on analysis by ERCOT and the Independent Market Monitor. This will serve Texas better than separate prescriptions of frequency, duration, magnitude of loss of load events, which could overly constrain and escalate ERCOT's model costs. We're currently gathering data. We'll share our comprehensive thoughts in the next session after evaluating the decisions being implemented by the regulatory bodies. As major electricity consumers, supplier of natural gas for electricity generation and potential electricity generators, we're committed to helping ensure cost-effective and reliable electricity for all Texans. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Members, we now go to the final category, which is SB 1699, and I call Connie, Woody, and Chris back to the panel. Connie, go ahead again and state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutral.
Thank you, Chairman and members. Connie Corona, Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission. Senate Bill 1699 specifies customer protections for the Aggregate Distributed Energy Resources, or ADER, pilot program. And ERCOT will be speaking further to that. So I will skip to the rulemaking specified for energy efficiency measures to reduce average residential loads from the bill. I'm happy to report that our new Energy Efficiency Division is up and running. The legislature provided us with 3 positions to staff up that division, and we've filled 2 of those already. We're in the process of hiring the 3rd person. This is a significant step for the PUC. Until now, we haven't had staff that was completely dedicated to energy efficiency and demand response work. So this is very exciting for us and for our stakeholders to have this dedicated team. A top priority for the new team is to review our existing rules and implement the requirements of SB 1699. So far on this topic, we've received input from nearly 24 stakeholders. This is helping us focus our implementation of the bill and includes a phased approach to tackle complex rulemakings. We've nearly completed scoping of a rulemaking on goals to reduce average residential load, and final adoption of that rule is expected by December. One other item I'd like to highlight is the Smart Thermostat program that Encore rolled out this month with 4 retail electric providers. This program offers incentives to reps to install smart thermostats in customers' homes. The goal is to study how to encourage widespread deployment of smart thermostats. Data from this program will help us determine what works best for customers and how we can make future programs more useful to those customers. We're very much looking forward to the results from that. Again, I'm very excited about the new division and the roadmap that our director is laying out. This is going to be a great benefit to residential consumers, both in reducing their energy usage and the bills that they pay.
Thank you. Woody, again, state your name, title, that you're testifying neutral.
Woody Rickerson, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for ERCOT. This morning I'll focus on the Aggregated Distributed Energy Resources, or ADERs. In July 2022, the PUC directed ERCOT to begin development of a pilot to allow participation of ADERs in the ERCOT wholesale market. As designed, ADERs consist of aggregations of many small individual sites that can be dispatched like one large site. From the start, the pilot, which is not something that ERCOT has had anything like this before, so the pilot contemplated multiple phases, with each phase building on the previous phase. The intent of the approach was to allow the pilot to commence as early as possible while minimizing changes to ERCOT and to the distribution service provider systems. The approach has allowed us to gain some valuable information on how to make this work before we have to make any changes to ERCOT rules and systems. So I've got some details here about phase 1 and phase 2 if you're interested in those. Currently, the pilot has about 13 megawatts of total resources with another 5 megawatts that are maybe close to being part of the program. And that concludes my remarks.
And I am going to ask you to give the details in printed form, get it to the clerk so we can give it to the members.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Chris, state your name, title, and that you're testifying neutral.
Chris Ekoh, Deputy Public Counsel, Office of Public Utility Counsel. I'm testifying neutrally. Chairman, when we started today, you mentioned where are the people in all of this? And this is truly one of the bills that calls attention to the people, and I applaud the legislature in adopting this bill. And I also like to mention that if implemented properly, this bill has the potential to lower bills, customer bills, and also will contribute to the reliability of the grid overall. OPOC supports practical and cost-effective strategies for customers to participate in and benefit from these programs. And we look forward to collaborating with the Commission's new Energy Efficiency Division that just got started. Recently, OPOC participated in the energy efficiency planning rulemaking, and we took time there to also encourage the Commission and stakeholders to consider how the energy efficiency programs will especially impact low-income and hard-to-reach consumers, apartment renters, individuals with medical conditions, and the like. Demand response programs and energy efficiency programs more broadly has the real potential that we think OPOC and all of the other stakeholders can review meaningfully to the benefits of all of the residential consumers in Texas. We are also actively engaged in the ADR pilot program, and we will continue to interface with ERCOT in that project. We participated in all of the workshops, and we look forward to continuing to work on those.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you all very much. Oh, sorry, Representative Turner does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question, I guess, for the PUC or for ERCOT. I think to Ms. Corona. So on this bill, I had an amendment that Chairman Hunter was gracious to accept, authored it along with Representatives Sonchia, Spiller, and Zwiener, about demand response and deploying widespread demand response devices to help with residential participation in a demand response program. And so I'm looking at this is an ERCOT status sheet on the bill, and it shows from this month, July of 2024. There's a status not started, and I'm just trying to understand what that refers to. I can't tell if that means the rule is not implemented yet, or the rulemaking process has not yet begun yet. But I just want to make sure we're on track to have the rules in place by the deadline in the bill of December of this year.
Yes, sir. We've begun with the pilot program that I described earlier, and that will help us begin to get some information to craft the rule, which will, yes, be adopted by December of this year as required.
Okay, so by December, we will know what the program is going to look like, and it'll be in effect for the ERCOT region.
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, I just want to clarify. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much. Members, our last panel, Sam and Cyrus, if you'll come forward. Sam, if you'll state your name, your title, and that you're testifying neutral.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members of the committee. My name is Sam Chang. I'm a Director and Associate General Counsel at CenterPoint Energy, and I'm testifying neutral on SB 1699. So thank you for the opportunity to testify about CenterPoint's efforts with regard to ADER and distributed energy resources. As stated by Mr. Rickerson, ADER is a virtual aggregation of small consumer-owned distributed energy resources. And we view ADER as another solution on top of dispatchable generation, transmission, energy efficiency, and demand-side management. We think ADER further allows customers to fully utilize assets that they've paid for and to provide energy to the grid when it needs it most. So CenterPoint was the chair of the PUC's ADER task force, and so we've worked with other parties to design and implement a pilot program that allows for ADER to participate in the ERCOT energy-only market. So currently there are 2 ADERs participating in ERCOT. There's about 13 megawatts participating on the energy side, and then there are 12 megawatts participating on non-responsive reserve and ERCOT contingency reserve. There are also 8 ADERs representing approximately 4.8 megawatts in the queue looking to participate in the ERCOT wholesale market. And as a point of reference, 1 megawatt is enough to power 200 homes. On top of our involvement in the PUC's ADER task force, we are looking to allocate a portion of our R&D budget to facilitate additional involvement on the distributed energy resources. And so we're looking to see operational effectiveness, study the impact that these resources have on our distribution system. And we think that's important given the tremendous amount of growth. So since 2016, we've seen approximately 46,000 distributed energy resources come onto our system, representing 700 megawatts. So in 2016, we had about 2,200 distributed energy resources, and by the end of 2023, we have about 48,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Cyrus, again, state your name, title.
Cyrus Reed, Legislative and Conservation Director, Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club. It's been a long day. Neutral on SB 1699, but during session we supported the bill. Very much appreciate both the original bill and the additions working with Mr. Turner, and I was going to say Mr. Anchia, but it appears to be Ms. Johnson. They have not yet fully implemented this rule. It really has a number of components. One is to clarify that ADERs that are working with retail electric providers are not power generation companies. That allows small consumers to participate in the energy market without having to go through the rigorous process of becoming a power generation company. That's really important if we're going to allow these folks to participate in our market. Second thing it did, as you mentioned, is it said within the energy efficiency programs that the TDUs and ERCOT run, they can dedicate up to 10% of their demand response budget to these type of programs for demand response. That's really important because according to ERCOT, in the winter, there are 32,000 megawatts of weather-sensitive load, very cold winter day, and in the summer, 29,500 megawatts of weather-sensitive load. If we can get the retail electric providers to work with utilities for smart thermostat programs, we may not need to build all that generation. We'll need to build some of it, but we may not need all of it. That's really important. The other part, rulemaking, that is going to be very important is what Connie mentioned, which is coming up with some goals for those customers who do have those kind of smart thermostats, smart appliances, setting some goals for ERCOT, and then allowing that to happen. We did participate in making comments. We haven't seen the rulemaking yet. We're hopeful it will. Let me do a shout out to, because they've gotten a lot of, they've gotten a lot of love today. CenterPoint is both doing these studies on energy efficiency potential, this is next year, and ADR potential, and they have also put into their program for 2025 actual money to do the smart thermostat. So has Encore. I hate to say it, but AEP and TNMP have yet to come on board to run a residential smart thermostat program. We're hopeful they will in the future. We'd love to get a little pressure on them to do the same because it's going to be really important to help all customers reduce their bills. And with that, I'll be quiet, but it's all in the written testimony as well.
Thank you. Members, any questions or forever hold your peace? No, just Thank you
Thank you.
both very much. Members, thank you, and everybody that's still here. I want to thank all the witnesses and members for your participation in today's hearing. That concludes today's agenda. If there's no other business to consider, if there's no objection, the Committee on State Affairs will stand adjourned, subject to the call of the chair. There are chairs, no objection. Committee on State Affairs now adjourned.